Chapter 650. After a long period of time, acceleration, and leveling up in this world, it was finally time for Tina to rest. She held onto Lin's hand and instantly teleported into the dragon palace of the dragon tribe. No dragon tribe cultivators could see the two of them, and Tina strolled toward the treasure vault of the dragon palace. The two of them passed through the door of the treasure vault and entered the treasure vault. Wow, so beautiful! Tina couldn't help but exclaim as she looked at the dazzling array of treasures before her. As expected of a dragon tribe, they really don't disappoint me. And Lin nodded in approval. The two of them walked around the treasure vault. And Lin didn't have a storage ring, so he only had a beautiful rainbow luminous pearl in his hand. Meanwhile, Tina had a few spirit medicines with extremely rich life force energy in her arms. Tina was omnipotent in this world, but after returning to the other world, she still had to slowly develop. At times like this, spirit medicines were extremely beneficial to her. That's right, Tina was trying to use her new authority to exchange items between the two worlds. If she could succeed, then it would mean that the world within her body was connected to the Taichu continent. This was a true mirror world. Are you ready? Tina asked in a gentle voice as she handed the items to Lin. And Lin nodded with a solemn expression as he held the rainbow luminous pearl and spirit medicines in his arms. Tina pointed a finger toward Lin's glabella. And Lin's vision darkened as his consciousness blurred again. In the next instant, he found himself meditating on the city wall. Oil flames were burning along the wall like a long, flaming dragon, extending all the way to the end. The bright moon hung high in the sky, and the night sky was filled with stars. And Lin faltered slightly as he looked down at his hands. Neither the rainbow luminous pearl nor the spirit medicines were in his hands. Did I fail? He turned to look at the fairy in his arms. Tina opened her eyes, and her emerald eyes reflected the starry night sky, making them appear especially clear and transparent. But all of a sudden, a white fragment that looked both real and illusory appeared in her eyes. Yin and yang rotated, reality and illusion alternated, chaos and origin fused, and a terrifying fluctuation spread out. A white ball of light appeared in front of Lin before shattering. A pearl glowing with colorful fluorescence and several spiritual herbs with strong aura appeared in Lin's hand. This is a success. Lin was trembling with excitement. He knew very well what this meant. This meant that he would be in possession of a world's treasures. The white fragments in Tina's eyes disappeared, and her body slumped into Lin's arms again. Little Na, what's wrong? Are you all right? Lin was given quite a fright as he carefully shook Tina. A pleasant and velvety voice sounded, "Oh, Giant and Lin, I forgot that your body isn't your true body yet, so I can only teleport matter between the two worlds. I'm so tired." Tina supported herself on Lin's chest with difficulty as she turned her head to look at the spirit medicines and the beautiful night-luminescent pearls with a smile on her face. "Thank God, even though it took some effort, I still succeeded," she said in a gentle voice. "I'm going to rest for a bit. Don't wake me up." And Lin nodded vigorously. "Go to sleep. I'll take care of everything here." Tina had already fallen asleep on Lin's body even before Lin had said anything. At this moment, Xiao Chou, Dabai, and Su Xiaolan had already rushed over to Lin's side with curiosity on their faces. How many days have passed? In the divine mirror world, Lin would completely lose his sense of time whenever Tina used time acceleration. Hence, he had to check the time every time he came out. "Big brotherin, you slept for 3 whole days, woof." A sly smile suddenly appeared on Dabai's face as he looked at Lin. "Hence, we've been cooking hot pot with your frying pan for the past 3 days. Woof." And Lin's face convulsed slightly. He seemed to recall that he had instructed Dabai to steam 100 steamers of stuffed buns a day that Dabai ignored. That had to be the case. However, Su Xiaolan was also here, so he could understand if she was also eating hot pot. "Did anything happen during the past 3 days?" Lin asked. "No, we didn't do anything on the city wall. We just stood there for 3 days," Xiao Chou replied with a pained expression. We were also banned from all recreational activities by our homeroom teacher. Su Xiaolan pursed her lips with a hint of displeasure and resignation in her eyes. Huh, you've been idling for 3 days? And Lin suddenly felt like he had made a wise decision by entering that world. At the very least, he had broadened his horizons and attained many insights. Most importantly, Tina had obtained a new level of authority. She had the authority to open up a new world. She was about to create limitless possibilities in the divine mirror world. Oh, that's right, Xiaolan. This rainbow luminous pearl is for you. I found it at the bottom of the ocean in that world. And Lin handed the rainbow luminous pearl to Su Xiaolan. A rare blush appeared on Su Xiaolan's face as she accepted the luminous pearl. Thank you, she said in a voice as gentle as an oriole's. I didn't think you would remember to pick out a present for me, even in that world. Wait, she suddenly realized something, and she stared at Lin with incredulity etched on her face. This bead is from that world. Xiao Chou and Dabai were also very excited. They had also realized what this entailed. Big brotherin, when are you going to take me to the divine mirror world to flex? Woof. Dabai wagged his snowy white tail with excitement in his eyes. Can it transfer lives? The clown's eyes were burning with excitement. It was obvious that he could not hold back his excitement. Theoretically, yes, but let's wait for little Na to recover first. And Lin replied in a gentle voice as he looked at the little fairy who had fallen into a deep slumber in his arms. He didn't want the little fairy to toil day and night. At the very least, he had to recover his energy first before attempting to transport life forms into the divine mirror world. His instincts told him that the transfer of life forms would be extremely taxing on his energy. 50 kilometers away from Huangquan City, a man in a red robe made his way toward them from afar. His long golden hair danced in the wind like golden waves, and his crimson eyes were as gentle as water. There was no hint of violence or violence in his expression. Instead, he appeared like a graceful and handsome young master. It really is here. Is it the primordial dragon tribe? That's quite an unexpected opponent. I didn't think that a being of this caliber would willingly submit to the celestial court. However, it's understandable why the dark poison lord fell. The man's gaze pierced through space, and he looked toward the city in the distance without any fear. Instead, he licked his lips as he continued. The blood of the primordial dragon tribe must be very delicious. It'll take the most powerful beings of the celestial court at least 10 minutes to get here, so there's more than enough time. I'm going to King slay this dragon and suck its blood dry to avenge my fallen subordinates. Chapter 651. Within Huangquan City, Xiaozhe suddenly opened his eyes, and his inky black pupils turned golden as boundless dragon might swept forth in all directions like raging waves. Everyone was given a fright by his sudden eruption of power, and they were just about to ask why, when Xiaozhe spoke first. Protect yourselves, everyone. There's an extremely powerful enemy approaching, and I'm no match for him. Even Xiaozhe, who was at the pinnacle of the Return of Void intermediate stage, was no match for this enemy. So just how terrifying was this enemy? Call for reinforcements. And Lin was also given a fright, and he immediately yelled as he woke up the sleeping Tina. The flying sword god immediately crushed an emergency jade talisman from the celestial court. The jade talisman was purple, which meant that the enemy was the most powerful of them all. Roar! An earth-shattering dragon roar erupted. Xiaozhe transformed into a black dragon over 10,000 feet in length and flew into the sky with a grave expression. He had to open up some distance. Otherwise, the shockwaves from the battle could very well raze Huangquan City to the ground. The city protection spell formation was also instantly activated. None of the soldiers chose to run, as there were hundreds of thousands of residents behind them. Even the students were injecting their vital energy into the spell formation with all their might. An azure barrier materialized in the air above Huangquan City, as if it were an indestructible Xianwu armor, from which a vast and boundless aura emanated. The golden-haired man turned toward Huang Quan City with a disdainful expression as he launched a palm downward. He could avenge the Dark Poison Lord by killing the primordial dragon tribe cultivators. In that case, he was going to avenge the 14 cities that had been destroyed by this one. In any case, a spell formation set up by a bunch of soul formation stage cultivators was not going to be able to defend against his full-force palm. Heaven and earth tremored violently. A crimson palm descended from the sky, enshrouding the entire Huang Quan City. All of the residents of Huang Quan City stumbled unsteadily at the sight of the crimson palm, and they fell to the ground with expressions of despair on their faces. All of them had a feeling that if this crimson palm were to fall, the entire Huang Quan City would be reduced to dust and completely disappear from this world. Xiaoze didn't think that his enemy would ignore him and attack Huang Quan City first. His expression changed, and his pitch-black dragon body began to move in a frenzy, condensing into a black tornado that blasted towards the blood palm. Rumble. The sound of collision reverberated throughout heaven and earth, and the resulting shockwaves swept out for close to 10 kilometers, even causing the defensive formation of Yellow Spring City to tremble. The crimson palm finally managed to disperse the black tornado, and although its power had been significantly reduced, it still possessed the power of a return to void stage cultivator. The brief exchange between Xiaoze and Layden was quite clear. Idiot! Layden also instantly appeared in front of Xiaoze at this moment. When fighting against an enemy, the greatest taboo was to be distracted by external matters. Being half-hearted, especially when facing an opponent stronger than oneself, was no different from courting death. Layden had suddenly attacked Huang Quan City as there was still some distance between him and Xiaoze. Even if he were to attack now, he would still have some time to defend himself against Xiaoze's retaliation. However, when Xiaoze chose to protect the insignificant Nether Spring City, he'd lost the initiative. Xiaoze was facing an enemy that was far more powerful than him, and he had lost the initiative. This was undoubtedly a lethal blow to Xiaoze. Layden didn't even need to look at the ants in the city that would be reduced to dust by his palm. His only target was Xiaoze, and a cruel expression appeared on his face. Bloodstar Finger. He pointed 2 fingers towards Xiaoze's dragon head. Heaven and earth instantly dimmed, and only a speck of red light fell from the sky with the power to pulverize all things in this world before crashing into Xiaoze's head. This was Layden's favorite technique, and it was a perfect fusion of his Bloodstar Finger. If it were to be struck head-on, it would be able to instantly kill a return to void intermediate stage mighty figure. Boom! Space shattered as a crimson light pierced through heaven and earth. Ow! Xiaoze howled in pain after being struck in the head by the Bloodstar Finger, and his massive, inky black dragon body was knocked back several kilometers. A peculiar expression appeared on Layden's face as he looked at the black dragon. What's going on? My power should be very powerful, and even a return to void final stage mighty figure wouldn't be able to defend against it. How is he unscathed? Layden unconsciously turned toward another direction, and his expression faltered slightly at the sight of the azure barrier that was still protecting Huang Quan City. Was there something wrong? Could it be that it was his own fault? Even a spell formation maintained by a soul formation stage mighty figure and a bunch of trash was able to defend against his crimson palm? Even though his attack had been weakened by the black dragon, it was still comparable to a return to void stage mighty figure. So there was no way that the people down below would be able to defend against it. How? Right at this moment, Xiaoze let loose a dragon's roar, summoning a bolt of divine lightning. A bolt of black lightning over 100 feet in diameter imbued with the power to annihilate all things crashed toward Layden's head, leaving a series of inky black spatial rifts in its wake. Layden thrust a palm toward the bolt of lightning, and a single palm strike was more than enough to defend against a full-force attack from a mighty figure at the pinnacle of the return to void intermediate stage. However, right at this moment, the terrifying aura of lightning suddenly soared explosively to the return to void final stage. A golden line suddenly appeared at the center of the inky black lightning, giving it a sense of devastating beauty. Boom! The lightning pierced through the protective power of Tao around Layden's palm and charred his hand black. How could this be? Is this really a dragon at the pinnacle of the return to void intermediate stage? Layden stared at his charred hand with incredulity on his face. He had initially planned to end the battle within 10 minutes, but never would he have thought that he would be the first to be wounded. At this moment, within Huang Quan City, lightning flashed lightly on Lin's fingertips. He had just unleashed a lightning amplification technique on his disciple's lightning, and he felt like the effect was quite good. Perhaps it was because of the disciple contract between him and Xiao Zhe, but his control over Xiao Zhe's lightning was much better than before, and his lightning amplification technique was also more effective. At the very least, Xiao Zhe's lightning spell techniques were comparable to return to void final stage mighty figures. "Tina, are you all right?" Lin turned to the petite fairy beside him. Tina shook her head with a smile. "I'm fine. I wouldn't be afraid, even if that attack came 100 times over." With Tina as the core of the spell formation, the flying sword god, Cheng Fei, Xiao Chou, Xin Yuan Cheng, Su Xiaolan, and Su Qianyun as the core of the spell formation, as well as the power of all the cultivators in the city. This spell formation was powerful enough to withstand a full-force attack from a mighty figure at the pinnacle of the return to void intermediate stage. However, the concern on Lin's face did not disappear as he knew what kind of enemy he was facing. This was a mighty figure at the pinnacle of the return to void final stage. This was a powerful being of the same caliber as the Dark Knight Monarch, Palace Leader Qing Li, and War God Xing Tian. He was well aware of just how terrifying powerful beings of this level were. This was a mighty figure who had attained the pinnacle of a certain Tao, attained the power of the divine Tao, and was facing the Tao integration stage. You never knew what kind of trump cards they had up their sleeves. It was exactly because of this that even though Lin's body of the war god had reached the initial success stage and possessed insane defensive prowess, he still didn't dare to show off outside the city. Instead, he could only hide within the spell formation like a harmless little rabbit. He was afraid that he would be killed by one of the Blood Tribe mighty figure's trump cards if he wasn't careful. The reason why Lin was so cowardly was because he had discovered a pattern, and that was that every time he used that life force technique, he would encounter enemies at the return of void pinnacle stage. This time, he had to break this curse. He definitely couldn't waste any more of his life. He had to survive until reinforcements from the Celestial Court arrived. Chapter 652. Lin made up his mind to survive until the very end. Another battle erupted not far away from Huang Quan City. Layden didn't hold back this time, and his body became like a crimson vortex that sucked in the surrounding vital energy, causing the night sky to collapse. Xiao Zhe's dragon scales spread open, and the sky instantly became filled with thunderclouds. Boundless black lightning fell from the sky and engulfed the entire heaven and earth before crashing down upon Layden's body with destructive and engulfing power. These black lightning bolts formed a black ball in a radius of 1 kilometer with Layden at the center. The ball continued to contract, and the might of the lightning crashing down upon Layden became more and more fearsome. Countless crimson stars shimmered from Layden's palms, which transformed into a series of afterimages that vanquished the oncoming black lightning. He had already unleashed his Blood Star divine ability, which possessed the power to shatter all techniques and shatter stars. He had even torn apart a return to void final stage mighty figure with his own hands before, so he was not under much pressure to defend himself against Xiao Zhe's black lightning attacks. "There's no time to waste. Let me finish you off right now." Layden's eyes were bloodshot, and a sinister smile appeared on his face. His hands, which were as dazzling as thousands of red stars, fiercely thrust towards the black lightning ball. Boundless blood-red light tore through the black lightning like sharp swords, stretching for tens of miles in the sky, dyeing the sky blood-red. Rip! The black ball of lightning was torn apart right down the middle before transforming into a streak of crimson light that hurtled toward Xiao Zhe. Xiao Zhe swung his dragon tail toward the streak of crimson light with unstoppable force. Boom! Another earth-shattering clash erupted between the two. It was no exaggeration to say that cultivators below the spirit-nurturing stage would be on the brink of death if they were to walk out of the green protective spell formation. Layden's palms, which shimmered with countless crimson stars, crashed into the dragon tail, sending the black dragon flying again. He didn't pause for even a single second as he chased after Xiao Zhe before unleashing another full-force palm strike toward the dragon's body. A terrifying boom erupted, and the shock waves from the palm strike pierced through Xiao Zhe, leaving a massive palm print over 10 kilometers in diameter in the ground. Xiao Zhe was also slammed into the ground from the sky. Little Xiao, when Lin saw this scene, he felt as if his heart was being squeezed. Layden stood proudly in midair as a gargantuan crimson star suddenly appeared behind him. Its light transformed the night sky into a crimson sky imbued with boundless resentment. This is divine Tao manifestation. The flying sword god's expression shifted drastically as he yelled. Even mighty figures at the return to void pinnacle stage would have to pay a heavy price to unleash such power. The power it releases can really destroy heaven and earth. We have to use all our strength to stabilize the formation. When Lin heard the words of the flying sword god, he became even more worried. His gaze lingered on the battlefield not far away. Layden put his hands together, and a red ball appeared before him, which seemed to be imbued with the power of an entire star. You killed my subordinate, the Dark Poison Lord, so I'm going to skin you alive, pull out your tendons, and drink your blood dry. I'm going to let the world know that those who dare to offend me must die. I'd like to see if your defense is strong enough to block my attack. Layden pushed his palms toward Xiaoza, and a red ball descended from the sky like a shooting star. The space around him congealed, and only the red ball, which was imbued with the most powerful Tao intent of Layden's blood star, landed on Xiaoza's body, leaving a crimson trail in its wake. Boom! At that moment, heaven and earth crumbled as a devastating explosion swept forth for over 50 kilometers. At the center of the explosion, a crimson sun erupted forth, illuminating the entire gem state and the dark marshlands. Terrifying shockwaves crashed into Huangquan City, and the green defensive spell formation began to tremor violently. A series of cracks began to appear on the spell formation, which was powerful enough to defend against attacks from mighty figures at the pinnacle of the return to void intermediate stage, but it was showing signs of cracking in the face of the shockwaves from the explosion. And Lin clenched his fists as he stared intently at the center of the explosion. He unleashed his divine sense, which was comparable to that of a return to void stage mighty figure, and he detected a life form panting heavily within a crater. Xiao Zhe was injured, and Lin's heart jolted as his body began to tremble. He knew that Layden must have thought that Xiao Zhe was the one who had killed the Dark Poison Lord, and that was why he had come here to exact revenge. Xiao Zhe had taken the blame for him. After the shock waves dissipated, a gargantuan crater had appeared in the ground. The black dragon, over 10,000 feet in length, had red blood seeping from its metallic scales. It trembled slightly at the bottom of the crater, and it looked up at Layden in the sky with no intention of submitting. Xiao Zhe's proudest defense had been broken by Layden's power of the divine Tao, but he still didn't choose to run. Instead, he unleashed his dragon might to its fullest extent, and he was just as proud and regal as ever. "Oh, you're still trying to bluff at me?" Layden narrowed his eyes as he looked down at the black dragon with a faint smile. "To be honest, I wouldn't have been able to kill you if you had chosen to run away. However, you chose to fight me. What an idiot. Even if you want to run now, you won't get a chance. Just let me suck your blood dry." The blood of a powerful being from the primordial dragon tribe must be very delicious. Perhaps it will be a catalyst for me to progress to the Tao integration stage. And Lin clenched his fists as his breathing accelerated upon hearing Layden's words. He knew why Xiao Zhe hadn't chosen to run away, and it was exactly because of this that he couldn't hold back any longer. Even if Xiao Zhe was his disciple, he was still his disciple. Layden didn't waste any more words as he pointed a finger at Xiao Zhe. Whoosh! The power of the blood star behind him surged forth like a tidal wave, and a crimson sword materialized at the tip of Layden's finger. Even though the energy imbued within the crimson sword was slightly inferior to the energy imbued within the crimson ball, it was still peerlessly sharp, as if it could slice through all things in this world. It was quite clear that Layden was planning to slice Xiao Zhe's body in half with this attack. Xiao Zhe's defenses had been broken, and he wouldn't be able to withstand such a monstrous attack in a short time. Roar! The black dragon's body sprang up from the crater, and it opened its cavernous mouth to blast forth a burst of ferocious black flames. The crimson sword also fell at this moment, and it was as if a meteor had fallen from the sky, tearing through the black flames before descending upon Xiao Zhe's head. A sense of impending doom engulfed Xiao Zhe's entire body as he stared at the blade of the crimson sword. He turned toward Huang Quan City out of the corner of his eyes. All of his family and friends had left him, but there was still one person in Huang Quan City who was worthy of his concern. For some reason, he chose to turn his gaze toward the top of Huang Quan City in this perilous situation. However, he didn't see that figure in that instant. The crimson sword pierced through the air, and a white light flashed past. The figure suddenly appeared before him. It was so close that he felt as if he could touch it. Just as Xiao Zhe thought that he was hallucinating, the figure pulled out a mirror and aimed it at the crimson sword. Boom! A crimson light illuminated the world. Under the boundless crimson light, the crimson sword somehow changed direction and pierced through heaven and earth toward Layden. Chapter 653. Layden felt like everything was completely inconceivable. The Bloodstar flying sword was his most powerful attack, but it had been absorbed by a mirror and then reflected back at him. His attack had been reflected back at him. The flying sword was extremely fast, and it was imbued with the power to seal off space. After a brief moment of shock, Layden still managed to dodge in the nick of time. The Bloodstar flying sword sliced through his arm with the power to slice through heaven and earth before slicing off one of his arms, upon which it was reduced to particles even smaller than molecules. Who the hell are you? Layden roared with shock and rage as he stared at the man who had suddenly appeared in front of Xiao Zhe. This man was none other than Lin, who had instructed Tina to teleport him to Xiao Zhe using her spatial skipping technique. Who am I? A faint smile appeared on Lin's face as he looked up at the blood tribe mighty figure in the sky with a disdainful expression. I am your daddy. Everyone instantly fell silent. Xiao Zhe's mouth gaped open. The flying sword god's face convulsed, and all of the students and soldiers on the city wall drew a sharp intake of breath. There was only one thought in their minds. What a bad *SS to speak to an enemy at the return to Void Pinnacle stage like this. Layden burst into laughter from rage. A mere soul formation stage cultivator dares to challenge me, just because he has some kind of powerful treasure? Very well. I'll make you experience something even more terrifying than death. I'll extract your soul and torture it for 100,000 years. Xiao Zhe also came to his senses at this moment. Master, what are you doing here? It's dangerous. My defensive prowess is extremely powerful, so I'll just hold on until reinforcements from the Celestial Court arrive. Hurry up and go back. He wasn't an idiot. After following Lin for so long, he knew that Lin's true cultivation base was only at the soul formation stage. Xiao Zhe didn't know how his master, who had once stood at the pinnacle of all stars, had become like this. However, he knew that he couldn't let his master take any risks in his current state. Go back. And Lin shook his head with a faint smile. I'm not going back. I'm your master. How can I just stand by and watch as my disciple gets beaten up? Xiao Zhe's expression faltered, and tears welled up in his eyes as he looked at Lin. He looked at the figure in white standing in front of him and felt that he was becoming taller and taller. The sense of security of being protected by an elder surged into his heart. It was an indescribable warmth. Even the students and soldiers on Netherworld City were in awe. They were all moved by this scene of deep love between a master and his disciple. Hey, when you're acting tough, can you put me away first? I can't reflect any moves right now. If you keep blindly swinging me outside, I'll break." A crisp and tender voice rang out at an untimely time. And Lin, the vermilion bird mirror, really was the destroyer of the atmosphere. It had taken them so much effort to create such a high-class atmosphere, but it was instantly ruined. And Lin silently stowed the mirror away into his storage ring before pulling out his evil slaying sword, upon which the unique aura of a sword immortal burst forth. A disdainful smile appeared on Layden's face as he sensed in Lin's aura. "Ignorant be asterisk starred. Do you really think you can hurt me? How did you break your arm?" And Lin chuckled. Layden faltered upon hearing this, as if he had choked on his words. "Oomph." Layden harumphed coldly, and his flesh squirmed as a brand new arm suddenly extended from the gash. "My arm is not severed. It's just temporarily gone." And Lin, all the onlookers, "Boss, is it really okay for you to be twisting words and forcing logic? You're lying through your teeth." Layden didn't waste any more words as he unleashed a palm toward Lin. This palm was extremely fast, and it was as if the entire sky could collapse under its power. And Lin didn't even have a chance to think about evading before his body was struck by the palm, and he was instantly sent flying for close to 10 kilometers. "Master!" Xiao Zhe let loose a cry of surprise before letting loose an enraged roar as his massive dragon body rose into the sky. Layden's speed was even faster, and he unleashed another palm to slam the black dragon into the ground. That palm of mine is clearly capable of wounding even a return to void stage mighty figure. How is that human still alive? Layden no longer looked at Xiao Zhe. Instead, he was staring at the figure flying toward him in the distance with a hint of surprise in his eyes. Blood trickled down the corners of Lin's lips. His body of the war god was still unable to withstand the power of that palm. Layden was a mighty figure at the return to void pinnacle stage, and his palm was imbued with the power of the divine Tao from the blood star behind him, thereby making it extremely fearsome. In the face of such a fearsome mighty figure, Lin didn't choose to back down. If he did, Xiao Zhe could very well be the one to die in the next second. He smeared the blood from the corners of his lips onto the blade of his evil-slaying sword as a pair of wings materialized on his back, and he abruptly pounced toward Layden. The holy blood was his last hope. He hoped that it would be able to either poison or purify this powerful blood tribe mighty figure to death. Why are there so many unkillable cockroaches? Layden's brows furrowed as he pointed 2 fingers toward Lin. A crimson sword materialized in the air, and the space around it began to crack open as a dazzling crimson light illuminated the night sky. Blood Star Flying Sword. This was a killing technique that was powerful enough to slay return to void final stage mighty figures. He had wanted to use this technique to kill Xiao Zhe, but who would have thought that it would be used by Lin? This time, he was going to use this sword strike to completely kill Lin in order to clear his mind and wipe away the humiliation he had suffered. And Lin's heart rate accelerated as his instincts told him that he would die if he were to be struck by that sword strike head-on. There was no time. There was no time to get close to him, and Lin cursed in his heart. Why did this blood tribe mighty figure like to attack from afar so much? Couldn't he carry on the tradition of vampires and pounce on me at the slightest provocation? There was no way that he could let him have a taste of holy blood if he did that. In the face of the threat of death, and Lin's mind raced as he suddenly thought of a certain spell technique, and he glared at Layden. A mystical ripple pierced through the air before instantly acting on Layden's body. Layden's lips twitched imperceptibly as an extremely terrifying feeling welled up in his stomach. Why is this happening? What the F***CK is this feeling? He soon realized what this feeling was. He was going to F***King diarrhea. That's right, and Lin had unleashed a make-you-poo technique on Layden. This was a spell technique that ignored all defenses and had a 100% accuracy rate. What did you do to me? Why am I getting this F***King feeling? Boundless killing intent erupted from Layden's eyes as he became agitated. PFFF. Something seemed to have exploded This explosion caused even his blood sword to tremor for an instant. Everyone on Huang Quan City was watching the battle between Lin and Layden with a tense expression. However, none of them thought that the terrifyingly powerful Layden's bottom would suddenly explode, and some kind of unknown liquid stained his robe. Everyone fell silent. They felt like they had just witnessed something inconceivable, but they chose to remain silent because it was too inconceivable. Chapter 654. Layden just farted, didn't he? It wasn't farting. Layden took a dump. T. It was clearly an explosion of T. So even mighty figures at the return to Void Pinnacle stage have T. I had always thought that mighty figures like him didn't need to take a dump. Xin Yuancheng rolled his eyes at the student who had just spoken. Once you manifest a soul formation stage body, you'll be able to make the most of your energy. Furthermore, you'll be able to expel waste materials as energy, so you won't need to poop. What Layden just excreted should be something from his body, not T. The flying sword god wore an expression of admiration on his face. To be able to make a mighty figure of this cultivation base instantly experience physiological discomfort. Classmate Lin really is a freakishly talented being. Su Xiaolan's brows furrowed slightly as she wondered how Lin had learned such a disgusting spell technique. Just as everyone was discussing spiritedly among themselves, Layden was already on the verge of exploding with rage. His stomach was still churning incessantly, but he had already used his power to forcibly repress it. The humiliation he was feeling right now was far greater than the pain he was feeling. Anyone would feel like they were going to have a mental breakdown if they were to suddenly explode in front of tens of thousands of spectators. He had already made up his mind. Everyone who had seen him explode had to die. Not a single one of them would be spared. You must die. Layden spat through gritted teeth as the blood star, sword before him, tremored slightly before instantly flying toward Lin. And Lin's storage ring also flashed in that instant, and a black brick suddenly appeared before him. A crimson light tore through the entire night sky, parting the inky black night sky in half. This was a sword light that could shatter space and annihilate all things between heaven and earth. Even a return to Void stage mighty figure would be slain by this sword strike. At this moment, everyone turned their eyes toward the end of the streak of crimson light, and even their breathing slowed significantly in fear that they would see something unacceptable. Lin was very powerful in their hearts, but he definitely wasn't invincible. He could be injured, and no one could guarantee that he would be able to survive in the face of such a powerful enemy. However, when everyone saw the pitch-black brick appear in their field of vision without a single crack, some people couldn't help but cheer. Su Xiaolan, Xin Yuancheng, and the others heaved a sigh of relief. They knew how hard the black brick was. Sure enough, Lin's head poked out from the black brick as he chuckled at Layden. That smile was extremely humiliating to Layden. He was a mighty being at the return to Void Pinnacle stage, yet he was being thwarted repeatedly by a soul formation stage cultivator. How was he supposed to calm down? This was a massive humiliation. I will definitely kill you. His eyes looked as if they were about to spit fire. Right at this moment, Layden thought back to the agony of the passing of his beloved. He thought back to how he had been bullied by a powerful being when he was a child. He thought back to how his mother had been devoured by a giant dragon. He thought back to the grief of seeing autumn leaves fall to the ground. The boundless pain made his eyes suddenly brim with tears. In the end, he couldn't help but bawl. Wah! Woo 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 woo. Bean-sized teardrops rolled down her cheeks, sparkling and translucent. Heaven and earth instantly fell silent, with only Layden's sobs reverberating through the air. All of the students and soldiers of Huang Quan City were dumbstruck upon seeing this. Is Layden crying? Even though it's a little humiliating to have one of his arms crippled by Godin, and he couldn't even hurt Godin, there's no reason for him to be crying like this. Where's his pride as a blood tribe, super powerful being? Now that you mention it, I feel like Layden really is quite pitiful. Shocking. A mighty figure at the return to Void Pinnacle stage of the blood tribe, was reduced to tears by Lin. What kind of story is hidden behind all of this? Do you guys think classmate Lin is going to beat him to tears? Does that mean he's going to run away? All of the students were discussing spiritedly among themselves. Most of them felt like Lin had already secured the upper hand. However, only Lin knew that he was at his wit's end. He had already unleashed all of the spell techniques that could interfere with Layden's movements. Come on, would those spell techniques be enough against a mighty figure at the return to Void Pinnacle stage? Just like how all of the other Soul Formation stage mighty figures had attacked Lin, they wouldn't even be able to withstand a single slap from him. The Divine Plunder technique still had some use, but it had a certain distance requirement. The target had to be within 100 meters of the spell technique in order to successfully unleash it. As for the current Lin, he probably wouldn't even be able to get within a kilometer of Layden. Layden had already repressed his tears through extraordinary willpower, and he was just about to unleash another attack on Lin. How? Xiaozhe regrouped and pounced toward Layden again. F***CK off. Layden roared with rage as he unleashed a palm toward Xiaozhe with all of his might. A massive crimson palm enshrouded the entire sky, and Xiaozhe was once again smashed into the ground. And Lin's heart was burning with anxiety upon seeing this. He didn't want to defeat Layden. Instead, he wanted to stall for time until the Celestial Court arrived. However, 10 minutes had already passed, and reinforcements from the Celestial Court still hadn't arrived. He was starting to grumble internally. Layden hated Xiaozhe the most as Xiaozhe had killed one of his subordinates. But now, a Soul Formation stage cultivator had dared to humiliate him over and over again, and he had even succeeded. Layden had always been a proud man who didn't like to be taken advantage of, so he immediately placed Lin on his list of targets. Layden made a grabbing motion toward Lin, and the space within a radius of 5 kilometers instantly congealed. Even the molecules in the air had stopped moving. He stepped forward, and his body transformed into a streak of crimson light as he pounced toward Lin. And Lin's body was immobilized by an extremely fearsome spatial seal, and the realm-piercing nail in his sleeve began to glow with a dazzling red light in an attempt to break through the spatial seal. However, the realm-piercing nail was unable to break through the spatial seal this time. This was the first time Lin had encountered something like this, and his heart sank. Layden's power had far exceeded his expectations, and there was nothing he could do now. And Lin looked at the approaching streak of crimson light and felt like he was done for. Even the spectators on the city wall couldn't help but clench their fists as they prayed and prayed in their hearts. Don't you dare hurt a member of the Celestial Court. At this moment, a thunderous roar erupted. Reinforcements from the Celestial Court had finally arrived, and Lin, Xiaozhe, and everyone else on Huangquan City were ecstatic as they turned toward the source of the voice with anticipation on their faces. A handsome man with skin as fair as jade and pink rouge on his lips transformed into a streak of white light as he flew toward Layden with a boundless aura. F***CK off. Layden, who was flying toward Lin, thrust a palm toward the streak of white light with an extremely impatient expression. The crimson palm tore through the air with terrifying power before crashing into the streak of white light. Boom! A resounding boom erupted. The streak of white light was sent flying as his blood-curdling cries reverberated throughout heaven and earth. And Lin, everyone on the city wall. Chapter 655. Everyone fell silent as they stared at the white figure that had been sent flying by Layden's palm. The savior of the Celestial Court had finally arrived, only for him to be sent flying with a single palm. What kind of experience was that? And Lin threw up a mouthful of blood as tens of thousands of alpacas stampeded over his heart. Are you a F***king clown sent by the Celestial Court? I risked my life to wait for reinforcements, but they're nothing more than trash. Die. Layden didn't waste any more time as he pounced toward Lin again. Countless crimson stars flashed past his claws, and one of his claws reached toward the chaotic alloy brick while the other reached toward Lin. Don't even think about hurting a member of the Celestial Court. Another loud roar sounded from afar. This time, The intruder was a black-robed man with a cold expression and a vast aura. He swung the golden bracelet in his hands toward Layden, and it continued to expand as boundless golden inscriptions imbued within it transformed into an extremely powerful sealing power that enshrouded Layden. Layden's body faltered momentarily under the sealing power, and Enlin took this opportunity to continue fleeing into the distance. "You're courting death." Layden flared up with rage as he slashed his claws toward the black-robed man. Crimson and bloodthirsty blade projections pierced through the air, instantly shattering the golden bracelet's sealing power before sweeping toward the black-robed man with the power of death and destruction, twisting and warping the space in its wake. The black-robed man's expression shifted drastically as he immediately activated the golden bracelet to protect himself. Boom! The golden sealing power clashed with the crimson blade projections, causing heaven and earth to tremble violently. In the end, the golden bracelet was unable to hold on any longer, and it was sent flying. The black-robed man was severely wounded, and he threw up blood as he stumbled back in retreat. He was no match for Layden. "Oof. You're just a bunch of Celestial Court Executive Department employees. How dare you interfere in this matter? You can all stay here." Crimson stars appeared behind Layden again as a terrifying power of the divine Tao enshrouded heaven and earth. "Is that so? Then you can stay here as well." At the very top of the sky, an indistinct and boundless voice resounded, and it contained boundless dignity. Layden's expression shifted drastically, and he couldn't even be bothered to say anything as he tore open a spatial rift to escape. "How dare you hurt the people of my celestial court? You better stay here." As soon as the voice faded, the space within 1,000 miles was sealed like an iron plate. Layden's body faltered slightly, as if it had been severely restricted. A man wearing a yellow and white Taoist robe appeared in the sky. He had a golden crown on his head, and his eyes contained the boundless might of the heavens. As soon as he appeared, the heavens and earth rumbled, and all living beings prostrated. And Lin was overjoyed when he saw who it was. This was the savior of the Celestial Court. He'd read about that man in books, so he knew how terrifying he was. That man was one of the 5 emperors of the Celestial Court, the Heavenly Emperor of Supreme Polarity of the West. Heavenly Emperor Tian Huang ruled over all living beings and wielded the Pantheon painting. He was also known as the Weapon Ancestor and the Lightning Ancestor. He was known as the Emperor of the Celestial Court for killing. Layden was clearly aware of the man's identity, and that was why he was trying to escape with all his might. "Heavenly Emperor Tian Huang, I'm only here to avenge my subordinate, the Dark Poison Lord. Seeing as you've intervened, I've cleared my debt with that dragon tribe cultivator, and I'll leave right away." Layden immediately offered to concede. However, Heavenly Emperor Tian Huang couldn't even be bothered to say anything as he pointed a finger toward Layden. Boom! In that instant, boundless lightning erupted from his finger, shattering all things in this world before landing directly on Layden's body. This bolt of lightning was thousands of times more fearsome than any lightning Enlin had ever seen. It was so powerful that one couldn't even muster up the will to resist it. The only thing they could do was tremble in the face of the terrifying lightning. The lightning tore through Layden's bloodstar with unstoppable force. Layden didn't even have a chance to evade, and he let loose a wail of anguish before his body was reduced to a cloud of blood mist. Gasp! Countless people drew a sharp intake of breath. That extremely powerful blood tribe mighty figure at the return to Void Pinnacle stage had been killed just like that. A faint smile appeared on Emperor Tian Huang's face as he turned toward the extreme distance of the Dark Marshlands. "You have a life-saving immortal tool like that? Interesting. Let's see how many times you can revive yourself." His body transformed into a bolt of lightning as he spoke, and he instantly disappeared into thin air. Everyone knew that Layden was escaping with some kind of life-saving immortal tool after hearing Emperor Tian Huang's words, and Emperor Tian Huang had given chase. "We're finally saved, huh? We survived. Many students and soldiers collapsed to the ground on the city wall of Huang Quan City, and some of them were cheering while others were sighing with emotion, as if they had just survived a calamity. However, no one noticed that a certain green mosquito was silently fleeing into the distance. Injecting energy into the city's defensive spell formation was extremely taxing for them. Now that the threat from the outside had been eliminated, they could no longer hold on and collapsed onto the city wall. A smile appeared on Tina's pale features at the sight of Enlin and Xiao Zhe, and she stopped her spell technique as her body plummeted from the sky. A pair of warm hands caught her petite body, and she was greeted by the sight of a flawless face. Thank you, Xiaolan. I'm going to take a nap. All right, go to sleep. I'll keep an eye on things here. A warm smile appeared on Su Xiaolan's face as she nurtured the little fairy in her arms with her pure flame power. As the core of the defensive spell formation, Tina was the one who had contributed the most. Her energy had been completely depleted by the relentless shockwaves, and it was time for her to get some rest. Enlin made his way over to Xiao Zhe with furrowed brows. Are you all right? Xiao Zhe had reverted back to his human form, and his clothes were in tatters. There were a series of wounds on his skin from which blood was seeping out, and he looked to be in an extremely sorry state. Xiao Zhe forced a smile onto his face. I'm fine. They're all just superficial wounds, and my Tao foundation and consciousness weren't harmed. Master, I did well this time, didn't I? And Lin heaved a sigh of relief as he patted Xiao Zhe's head with a smile. You did very well. Let's go, I'll take you back. And Lin flew toward Huang Quan City atop his brick with Xiao Zhe in tow. The soldiers and students of Huang Quan City all waved and cheered from the city walls to welcome their heroes back. In the face of such fearsome enemies, and Lin and Xiao Zhe had stepped forward, and this undoubtedly earned them the respect of everyone on the city wall. The white-robed man and the black-robed man also flew toward them. And Lin had a very strong impression of these two people, and he almost thought that the Celestial Court had sent these two cannon fodder to deal with them. After that, the two of them introduced themselves, and Lin learned that they were the heads of the Celestial Court's executive department stationed in the Dark Marshlands. The handsome man in the white robe with rouge on his face was the vice head of the executive department, Chen Yu. The black-clothed man with golden bracelets on his wrists, a stern expression, and a piercingly cold and murderous aura was the head of the executive department, Jin Hu. Wow, so it was the big boss of the Celestial Court stationed in the Dark Marshlands. And Lin and the others' expressions shifted, and they immediately extended respectful salutes. However, for some reason, they just couldn't muster up any feelings of reverence in their hearts. Perhaps this was the after-effect of the previous battle. However, and Lin knew that even though they had appeared in a very pitiful manner, it was exactly because of their desperate resistance that he was able to appear on the city wall in one piece. Hence, and Lin was still filled with gratitude toward these two people from the executive department. Chapter 656. Over 1,000 kilometers away from Huang Quan City, Layden's body began to materialize. His face was deathly pale, and he panted heavily as he crushed the jade talisman in his hand before rushing toward the central region. Father, hurry up. I can't hold on any longer. Layden was holding a black lotus-like object in his hand. There were originally 3 glowing petals on the black lotus, but one of the petals had been completely shattered. This was his high-rank immortal tool, the Holy Demonic Lotus. The Holy Demonic Lotus could nullify any fatal injuries inflicted by its owner and use the power of rebirth to teleport its owner thousands of kilometers away. It was an extremely powerful, life-saving treasure. Just as Layden was about to continue his escape, a dazzling bolt of lightning fell from the sky. This was a bolt of black and white lightning, as if it were the first lightning to split heaven and earth apart, instantly shattering the space around it. Layden's body reappeared with a massive hole in his chest. He looked up into the distance with a sinister expression. Emperor Tian Huang, if you dare to kill me, my father will definitely... Boom! Another bolt of lightning flashed through the air, and Layden didn't even get a chance to finish his sentence before his body was blasted into a cloud of blood mist. The man in the yellow and white Taoist robes flew over as a bolt of lightning, and a hint of battle intent appeared on his face as he looked at the dissipating cloud of blood mist. You're still alive? That's a pretty good life-saving treasure. Let's see how many times you can die. He transformed into a bolt of lightning again as he spoke before flying into the distance. Layden's body appeared thousands of kilometers away again before he unleashed his blood escape technique without any hesitation. Not long after that, another bolt of lightning flashed toward him from the distance. Lightning was top-notch in terms of speed and killing prowess. At the same time, lightning was extremely pure and was extremely lethal to Blood Tribe cultivators. Emperor Tian Huang was also known as the Weapon Patriarch and Lightning Patriarch, so it could be said that he was the most proficient in using lightning. This was a clear indication of just how much despair Layden was in. It could be said that even the celestial Tharch himself wouldn't be this fearful. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion erupted as a bolt of lightning tore through the sky. Layden was forced out by the lightning again as he attempted to teleport. Hold on, I have something to say. Rumble. Before he could finish speaking, the terrifying lightning once again blasted his body into a bloody mist. 500 kilometers away, Layden's body reappeared. His face was extremely pale, and the high-rank immortal tool in his hand, the holy demonic lotus, had completely crumbled. The resurrection immortal artifact was destroyed just like that. Layden didn't have the time to grieve over an immortal tool. There was a good chance that he was going to die here, so he didn't have the time to grieve over an immortal tool. He once again used the method of burning his blood to escape. This wasn't a 5,000-kilometer pursuit. He had already run for close to 5,000 kilometers, and Emperor Tian Huang was still chasing him. This was a 10,000-kilometer pursuit. Furthermore, it was done in the territory of the Blood Tribe, the Dark Marshlands. Just how great of a grudge was this? Layden regretted going to Huang Quan City to slay dragons. He didn't manage to slaughter the dragon, but he was about to be slaughtered. A nightmarish flash of black and white appeared, and Layden's heart sank. In that instant, he completely unleashed the Tao of the Blood Star. The blood-colored star condensed behind him to block the lightning. Rumble. The resulting collision shattered the earth within a radius of over 50 kilometers, and a Blood Tribe city nearby was inexplicably razed to the ground by the shockwaves. This was a battle between top-rate mighty figures, and each and every one of their attacks possessed the power to destroy heaven and earth. In the end, the lightning still tore through the Crimson Star and blasted a massive hole into Layden's chest. Thankfully, the power of the lightning had been nullified by the Blood Star. Otherwise, Layden would have been dead. However, even though he wasn't dead yet, he wasn't far from it. Layden clutched his chest as his body trembled uncontrollably as he looked at the figure hurtling toward him. The bolt of lightning in the distance transformed into a man with a stern expression. The smile on the man's face was akin to that of a cat toying with a mouse as he looked at Layden. What? You're not running anymore. Have you used up all your resurrection methods? Do you feel like you're going to die anyway? So why not take a good look at me before you die? Layden's face convulsed as he threw up another large mouthful of blood. Emperor Tian Huang's expression darkened. You still dare to mock me? No, there's no such thing. Emperor Tian Huang's might is unparalleled. I was just feeling unwell just then. Layden waved his hands with an earnest expression. He had never felt so small and weak before. He was a super powerful being who was on the verge of Tao integration stage, but he was completely powerless against Emperor Tian Huang. His life was completely in the hands of his opponent. You have good taste. So be it. I've fulfilled your wish, so I'll send you on your way now. Lightning flashed in Emperor Tian Huang's hand as a fearsome power began to accumulate. Layden's legs instantly gave out from under him as he roared in his heart. What kind of wish had he fulfilled? Could it be considered a wish to admire his heroic appearance before he died? Was there something wrong with this true god's brain? Emperor Tian Huang couldn't be bothered to care about what Layden was thinking. He waved a hand through the air, and a bolt of lightning that was powerful enough to annihilate all things began to hurtle toward Layden. An expression of despair appeared on Layden's face as he roared and unleashed all of his spell techniques to defend himself against the bolt of lightning. However, the bolt of lightning was not something that could be defended against by hastily unleashed spell techniques. The bolt of lightning tore through all of the spell techniques as it hurtled directly toward Layden's head. In the next instant, Layden's body and soul were both destroyed. Right at this moment, an antiquated, inky black wall suddenly appeared in front of Layden. Boom! The unstoppable bolt of lightning struck the massive wall, causing a series of cracks to appear on its surface. However, it was still able to withstand the lethal strike in the end. Tears flowed from Layden's eyes as he looked at the familiar wall. Father! A man enshrouded in a divine light of Tao began to appear on the massive wall with his hands clasped behind his back. Layden's expression faltered slightly at the sight of the man. This man was different from the average blood tribe cultivator. He had a pair of inky black eyes, a thin figure, and long black hair. As soon as he appeared, the space around him began to collapse and cave in, as if he were an abyss of boundless darkness and nothingness, guiding all living beings to oblivion and death. The man felt a little awkward upon hearing Layden refer to him as father, and he cleared his throat before replying. Your father is currently practicing the blood prison illustration in the Divine Palace of Life, so he asked me to use the spatial teleportation wall to save you. Layden, Emperor Tian Huang's expression faltered slightly before he chortled with glee. Ha ha, that's not a bad way to address you. The only one who can save your life is you, father. Layden's face was flushed with rage upon hearing this. Even though he had expended all of his energy, his face was still flushed with rage. It was clear to see just how devastated he was feeling right now. It could be said that he had never suffered more humiliation in his entire life than today. Chapter 657. Even though Layden was feeling extremely humiliated, he was still extremely elated that he had managed to escape with his life in the nick of time. The mighty figure who had come to save him was one of the 4 Tao integration stage emperors of the Divine Palace of Life, Emperor Embark. Emperor Embark was the previous holy disciple, and he was extremely powerful. It could be said that he was the most powerful Tao integration stage emperor among the 4 emperors aside from Emperor Tian. Emperor Tian Huang, why don't we just let this matter rest? You didn't suffer any losses, and we won't pursue the Dark Poison Lord's death and the destruction of the 14 cities. How about we just let this matter rest? Emperor Embark proposed in a refined and courteous manner. However, in terms of the consequences of this matter, the blood race would undoubtedly have to pay a greater price. It was obvious that the blood race's great emperor had made a huge concession by personally making such a promise. However, Emperor Tian Huang shook his head without a second thought. No, Layden must die. Emperor Embark's expression darkened. Why? He just transmitted his voice to me, and he told me that he didn't kill any of the powerful beings of the Celestial Court. Lightning flashed through Emperor Tian Huang's eyes as he spoke in an indifferent voice. However, if I had arrived a moment later, the hope of the Celestial Court would have been destroyed by Layden, and countless prodigies and citizens would have been killed by him. I can't allow someone like him to live. However, none of that happened, and I promised that I wouldn't target these people again, Emperor Embark said. Ha! Foolish blood tribe cultivator. Have you never heard of the crime of attempted murder? A mocking smile appeared on Emperor Tian Huang's face. Attempted murder? Emperor Embark faltered slightly upon hearing this. At this moment, an extremely terrifying bolt of lightning instantly descended upon Layden. Layden's face turned deathly pale in the face of this terrifying bolt of lightning, and a sense of impending doom engulfed his entire body. Right at this moment, a pitch-black palm suddenly appeared in front of him. It was like an abyss that could devour all things, grabbing that extremely frightening lightning in its hand and slowly absorbing it. Emperor Tian Huang, are you really not going to let this matter rest? Emperor Embark's brows furrowed slightly, perplexed by Emperor Tian Huang's actions. Emperor Tian Huang took a step forward, and the entire area within a radius of over 50 kilometers was instantly filled with boundless lightning that pulverized the void and annihilated all living things. The earth was instantly reduced to scorched earth, and all living beings didn't even have a chance to scream before they were reduced to ashes by the lightning. Emperor, don't go too far. Emperor and Mang was enraged by this, and the sun and moon in the sky were obscured as boundless darkness engulfed the entire world. What's with all the blabbering? If you want to stop me from killing Layden, then come and fight me. Emperor Tian Huang laughed heartily as he pounced toward Emperor and Mang. Emperor and Mang unleashed the boundless great Tao of darkness and death, and heaven and earth wailed as everything within a radius of 500 kilometers fell into darkness. Emperor Tian Huang summoned tens of thousands of lightning bolts to sweep across the sky, reducing everything in their path to nothingness. The two Tao integration stage super mighty figures were finally unleashing a massive battle. Layden took advantage of this opportunity to escape with all his might. During his escape, he unleashed several different mystic techniques and life-saving treasures, and he finally managed to escape from that hellish place. He didn't dare to spectate from the sidelines in fear that he would be blasted to death by Emperor Tian Huang's chaotic lightning if he wasn't careful. Layden transformed into a streak of crimson light as he fled toward the divine palace of life. At this moment, his only thought was to get to his father's side and slowly recover from his injuries. Not only had he wasted an extremely precious life-saving immortal tool in this battle, but his Tao foundation had also been severely damaged, and his path to the Tao integration stage had become a very distant one. This was the most tragic outcome for him. Detestable, detestable. It's all because of that dragon and that human male. Layden gritted his teeth with hatred toward those two strangers. He swore to himself that he would find an opportunity to exact revenge on them in the future. Boom, boom, boom. Atop Huang Quan City, and Lin and the others stared into the distance with bewilderment in their eyes. Is this an earthquake? Su Qinyun asked in a mellow voice with a surprised expression. The tremors of an earthquake are very rhythmic, not as chaotic as this. Xin Yuan Cheng shook his head and said, I feel like someone is conducting some kind of mysterious experiment. And Lin's expression darkened. This is clearly caused by a battle. Emperor Tian Huang must be battling someone. Su Xiaolan was a little excited. It must be a battle between two Tao integration stage super mighty figures. Should we go and have a look? Perhaps it will deepen our understanding of the Tao. Before Lin had a chance to say anything, the flying sword god immediately objected with a solemn expression. No, stay where you are. A battle between super mighty figures like this could easily get caught up in the shockwaves. Sissy Chinyu nodded in agreement. 1,000 years ago, Emperor Ziwei battled the divine Bat Emperor of the sinister spirit bee cesspool. There was a return to Void Stage Dragon who seemed to be a prodigy of the Ao tribe who ran over to spectate the battle in excitement, only to be killed by one of the divine Bat Emperor's divine abilities in a moment of carelessness. The Dragon tribe didn't even have a Tao integration stage super mighty figure yet, so they could only swallow this humiliation. Lin also felt like the Dragon tribe was quite aggrieved upon hearing this. Their pillar of support had been slain, but they didn't dare to say anything. However, he couldn't muster up any sympathy for those people when he thought about the Dragon Princess. The battle between Emperor Tian Huang and Emperor and Mang ended in a draw. It looked like neither of them had gained the upper hand, but the result was that the Blood Tribe's dark marshlands had been reduced to scorched earth for over 1,000 kilometers. 12 cities had been destroyed due to an unknown attack, and hundreds of thousands of Blood Tribe cultivators had perished. The Blood Tribe had to bear all of the losses incurred in this battle. Emperor and Mang finally understood why Emperor Tian Huang was so insistent on this battle. He was using Layden's death as a F*King excuse to wreak havoc in the dark marshlands. In the end, Emperor Tian Huang laughed heartily. Let's fight another day. Emperor and Mang almost chased after him into the kingdom of the 9 states, but he then thought of the other 4 emperors of the celestial court, and he stopped in his tracks. Remember this, Emperor Tian Huang. He looked at the figure of the lightning that was fleeing into the distance, helplessly throwing down these words before disappearing into the void once more. Thus, the battle came to an end, and Lin was a little surprised that Emperor Tian Huang hadn't killed Layton. However, after thinking about it for a moment, he realized that this wasn't all that surprising. Layton was a supremely talented prodigy who had a good chance of progressing to the Dao integration stage, so the Blood Tribe would definitely keep an eye on him. He had many trump cards, so there was no way that Emperor Tian Huang would be able to kill him so easily. Before Emperor Tian Huang left, he left a wisp of his divine intent toward Huang Quan City in case any other Blood Tribe mighty figures came to seek revenge. After surviving that ordeal, everyone in Huang Quan City returned to their idle state. Not only did the students not want to go to the Dark Marshlands, but even the soldiers refused to patrol the area. In the past, the Flying Sword God would organize scouting missions to see if there were any Blood Tribe spies nearby. However, this was a sensitive period, so they didn't even have to do that. Everyone remained on the city wall as a lookout, while they were just standing around like idiots. 2 days later, Tina revived on the spot after a good night's sleep, as she excitedly dragged Lin along to enter the divine mirror world. Chapter 658. Su Xiaolan, Xianyuan Cheng, Su Qinyun, and the others were gathered together as they stared at Lin with anxious expressions. Lin and Tina were preparing to conduct some kind of grand experiment. Is this really going to be all right? Lin swallowed involuntarily as he looked at the adorable fairy before him. I think we should find a few more lab rats to test it out on. Don't worry, Giant and Lin. Didn't we already test it out before? Teleportation is the same as teleportation. As long as I can control the passageway between the two worlds, something like this will be a piece of cake for me. Tina patted her chest confidently. That's right, Tina was preparing to conduct a life-form teleportation experiment. She was going to teleport Lin into the divine mirror world as a life form. Lin couldn't be too careful about something like this. If things got out of hand, he would be the one to suffer the most. After a fierce struggle in his mind, he finally nodded with some difficulty. Tina placed her hands on Lin's forehead with a wide grin. A white light enshrouded the two of them as fragments of the realm core shimmered in her emerald eyes. Whoosh! Light flashed, and the two of them disappeared on the spot. Su Qinyun's eyes widened in shock as she covered her mouth with her hand. They really disappeared. This is a power that transcends spatial teleportation. It's very useful. Su Xiaolan stroked her chin as she spoke in a slow voice. Tina has also disappeared. With Tina here, classmate Lin should be safe. Xianyuan Cheng heaved a sigh of relief with a smile on his face. Meanwhile, in the air above Qilu City in the divine mirror world, a white light flashed, and Lin and Tina appeared again. Tina held onto Lin's hand with a dainty smile on her face. Giant Lin, how are you feeling? Lin stared at the human-sized Tina in front of him. Her white dress fluttered in the wind, and her skin was whiter than snow. Her eyes sparkled like the stars, and her features were peerlessly beautiful. He couldn't help but poke Tina's delicate cheek. I feel like you're more real than before. That's because Little Na also teleported here with her true body. Tina explained with a smile, but don't worry, my authority hasn't changed. I can still fuse with the world and teleport us out at the same time. Lin was relieved to hear that and began to turn his attention elsewhere. The warm sun, the cool breeze, the abundant vitality, the invincible divine body. Lin's storage ring flashed, and the black brick appeared beneath his feet. He was stunned for a moment. Nothing has changed. It's really a true body teleportation. He was really excited. This world was real, and it could connect the two worlds. This was a gargantuan treasure trove. A thought suddenly occurred to Lin, and he asked, by the way, can you teleport living beings from the outside world aside from myself into this place? That's not a problem, but I can only teleport living beings below the return to void stage. This world isn't developed enough to accommodate beings with cultivation bases that are too high, Tina replied. And Lin's eyes lit up with anticipation upon hearing this. If she could teleport return to void stage living beings in the future, then Tina would be able to drag Layden into this world and kill him using her authority in this world. TSK, 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 TSK. How tempting. No matter how powerful a person was, there was no way they could be more powerful than the ruler of the divine mirror world. When that time came, they could do whatever they wanted to them. They had the final say in this world. Let's go. It's time for us to build up our relationship with all of the tribes. And Lynn said with an excited expression. Build up our relationship? Tina blinked with a perplexed expression. We'll appear as God's spokesperson and befriend them. In the future, we can issue missions for them to fight in the outside world or collect treasures for us in this world. Wouldn't that be a simple task? And Lynn explained with a smile. Tina's eyes lit up with excitement. That's brilliant. Even though all of the tribes had soul formation stage powerful beings, the astral engulfing beasts were still nightmarish existences to them. There was no other reason for this than the fact that they were extremely elusive and difficult to eliminate. After leaving the city, there was no telling when an astral engulfing beast would suddenly appear. If they didn't want to be killed, the simple solution was to become more powerful. As long as their cultivation bases reached the spirit nurturing stage, they would be able to deal with the spirit engulfing beasts. Teams with high-level Tao body stages would be able to fight and retreat at the same time. As for those with lower cultivation bases, they had to be careful. Within a small palace in Qi Lu City, a man slowly descended from above a cloud of mist. All of the guards in the palace were alerted by this, and alarms began to blare as a dozen or so guards wielding flying swords and several dozen guards wielding firearms aimed their weapons at the handsome man in a flowing white robe. Who are you? How dare you trespass into the imperial palace? A spirit-nurturing stage guard leader yelled as he stepped forward. He was the second son of Adam and Eve, and his name was Intel. Lin crossed his arms and raised his head slightly. His aura was vast and ethereal, and there was a calm expression on his face. I am God's spokesperson, Lin. You're going to kneel before me now. Intel couldn't help but burst into laughter. A measly spirit-nurturing stage cultivator dares to pretend to be the spokesperson of God? Open fire. Bam, bam, bam. Several dozen guns were fired at once as bullets tore through the air toward Lin. A dozen or so flying swords also rose into the air before slashing toward the man at the center of the palace with sharp sword intent. Intel thought that the intruder was going to be reduced to a hornet's nest in the next second. To his surprise, however, an incredible scene unfolded before his eyes. All of the bullets and flying swords were stopped a meter away from the man and were unable to advance any further. Intel and the other guards all stared at the man before them in shock, and some of them were even trembling uncontrollably. It was quite clear that the intruder was extremely powerful. Is this how you welcome the spokesperson of God? Lin's expression was one of might as a golden light flashed through his eyes. Divine might technique. A peerlessly powerful aura instantly proliferated through the air. Intel felt as if he were facing a paramount god. The boundless might that stood at the pinnacle of all living beings instantly engulfed all of his pride. His legs gave out from under him, and he collapsed to the ground. More than half of the weaker guards even fainted on the spot. Intel had no choice but to believe in Lin this time, and his hands trembled as he yelled, Master Lin, please forgive us for our ignorance. And Lin nodded lightly. This is the first time you've done something like this. Don't do it again. Summon the leader of the human race, Adam and Eve. Yes, I'll go and inform them right away. Ink bowed respectfully and replied in a straightforward manner. A satisfied smile appeared on Lin's face as he felt extremely elated. It felt quite good to be the spokesperson of God. Intel had only just stood up when a gate opened. A man and a woman emerged from within. The man was extremely handsome, while the woman was exquisitely beautiful. They both faltered slightly upon seeing Lin before letting loose cries of surprise. It's you. Chapter 659. Adam and Eve were quite surprised to see that Adam and Eve seemed to be acquainted with Lin. Father, mother, You two also know God's spokesperson? God's spokesperson? Adam and Eve looked at each other to see the astonishment in each other's eyes. Oh, you two still remember me? And Lynn looked at the two of them with an intrigued expression. I do. Adam looked at Lynn with a complex expression as he said, I had a very clear dream in which you and another woman once hugged us. And Lynn nodded to indicate that he was quite pleased with this answer. Tina had given them a set of clothes when they were born. It was the clothes that they were wearing now. These clothes were eco-friendly and had even more powerful defensive properties than the average protective spirit tool. By the way, tell me, am I more handsome or are you more handsome? And Lynn suddenly asked. Adam and Eve faltered upon hearing this, clearly unsure of why this mysterious man would ask them this. However, Adam soon recalled a conversation he had with Eve a long time ago. He seemed to have mentioned that the person who had hugged them in the past couldn't be their parents, as he was much more handsome than that man. Adam was astonished upon hearing this. This man was definitely a king god. Of course you're the most handsome, spokesperson Shun. I've never seen someone as handsome as you. Adam spoke with a sincere expression. You have good taste. Don't blame me if you say the wrong thing next time. And Lynn's dazzling smile appeared on his face. Eve, Adam, immediately thereafter, and Lynn summoned Adam and the others to the main palace for a meeting. Adam and Eve had already acknowledged Lynn's identity, and they also had many questions for Lynn. All of the other 9 children were extremely respectful toward Lynn upon hearing that the spokesperson of God was coming. Lynn was enjoying the fruits produced in the holy orchard. These fruits had been personally planted by Tina many years ago, and they were now full of vitality and were almost as potent as some low-rank spirit fruits. He and Tina were actually working on the cultivation of immortal treasures as well. They had already set up a cultivation base at the core node of a certain massive ley line. There, vital energy rained down like rain, and multicolored light shone for tens of thousands of feet. The essence of the sun and the stars converged, and this was a place where the fortune of heaven and earth lay. It could be said to be a true immortal ground. Tina didn't dare to make too many changes in case it affected the normal development of this world. Actually, it was enough for them to play in that Xanadu. After 1,000 years, there would definitely be many immortal fruits and immortal medicines, and Lynn took a bite of the crimson sun fruit and murmured, You asked me how you came here? Adam and Eve nodded with excitement as they stared at Lynn with scorching light in their eyes. This was a question that had been plaguing them for a long time. I'm your father. And Lynn smiled. Adam and Eve shuddered as they stared at Lynn with incredulity in their eyes. Father? The other 9 children were also given a fright. Never would they have thought that the spokesperson of God would be their grandpa, and Lynn waved a hand with a mischievous expression. Haha, I was just joking. I was just trying to lighten the mood. Adam and Eve's expressions faltered as negative emotions surged through their bodies. The 9 children felt as if they had a mouthful of blood clogging their chests. They wanted to lash out, but they didn't dare to do so. An awkward smile appeared on Lynn's face as the atmosphere became even colder. Adam, Eve, you were actually born from heaven and earth, and you were the most primitive human beings. I appeared with the clone of God to guide you into this world. The 9th son, Seth, furrowed his brows with a perplexed expression. That can't be right. Our books contain records of countless human activities, as well as many powerful immortals who could move mountains and fill oceans. And Lynn smiled. Those people are actually all dead, and that world has already perished. This is a brand new world, and this city is merely a replica of the original city. All of you are the new living beings of this world. Everyone's expressions shifted upon hearing this. Seth fell in a deep thought, and Lynn's words just so happened to explain why the terrain outside Chi-Lu City was completely different from what was recorded in some of the books. They were finally beginning to understand what it meant to say that there was always someone more powerful than you out there. After that, Lynn gave them a general overview of this world. Aside from concealing his and Tina's identities, he answered all of their questions. God will be withdrawing his protection from you humans from now on. From this day forth, You will face the true cruelty of this world. I hope you can quickly grow up. I still have some matters to attend to, so farewell." And Lin unleashed his mist immortal technique as he spoke, and he drifted away as a cloud of white mist. Spokesperson Shun, "I still have one more thing. How many astral-devouring beasts are there?" "Farewell, Spokesperson Shin. Take care." Everyone was given a fright by Lin's sudden departure, but they still chose to bid him farewell in the end. And Lin was very satisfied with his performance. As the spokesperson of God, he should come and go as he pleased. He should come and go as he pleased. He should come and go as he pleased. A crisp, pleasant voice sounded beside his ear. "Giant and Lin, where should we go next?" And Lin pondered for a moment before replying. "Let's go to the Darkwing tribe. It's time to crush their arrogance. Otherwise, they'll always think that they're the most powerful beings in this world." Late at night, on a black floating continent, the sky was filled with stars, and the power of the stars converged toward the continent. A series of black-winged beings soared through the sky, either traversing the sea of clouds or patrolling the mortal world. Right at this moment, an uninvited guest suddenly appeared. This was a man whose entire body was enshrouded in divine flames, as if he were the sun in the sky. "Enemy attack! Enemy attack! Enemy attack!" The Darkwing tribe guards yelled upon seeing this. One black figure after another pounced toward the ball of flames. However, they didn't even get a chance to touch the flames before they were repelled by a terrifying force. The male plummeted like a meteorite, passing through the myriad star palace's most heavily guarded defenses and landing directly outside the palace gates. Waves of flames swept out in all directions, knocking back and injuring over 100 Darkwing tribe cultivators at the palace gates. "Who are you? How dare you barge into the myriad star palace? Do you have a death wish?" A Darkwing tribe general charged forward with a long sword pointed at Lin. And Lin dissipated the flames around his body to reveal his true appearance. "You're too weak. Find someone stronger to talk to me." "Impudent. I'll let you have a taste." Slap. The Darkwing tribe general didn't even get a chance to finish his sentence before he was slapped flying by Lin. He crashed through several walls before finally coming to a halt. Pwah! The general threw up a large mouthful of blood, and his eyes rolled into the back of his head as he fainted. Gasp! Some of the Darkwing tribe guards drew a sharp intake of breath upon seeing this. The guards who were about to pounce toward Lin suddenly stopped in their tracks. That was one of the top 10 most powerful generals in the Darkwing tribe, but he was slapped flying by a single palm from this mysterious man. They were going to die if they charged forward. Is there no one else in the Darkwing tribe? And Lin looked around at the deathly silent surroundings before speaking in a loud voice. All of the Darkwing tribe guards around him fell silent. They knew that this was definitely a powerful being of the soul formation stage. He was not someone they could mess with. There's no one else in the Darkwing tribe? Please go ahead." A soft voice sounded from within the myriad star palace. Lin. Chapter 660. Lin didn't dare to believe his own ears. He was here to demonstrate his might. He had already fought his way to the Darkwing tribe's doorstep and asked in a loud voice, "Is there no one left in the Darkwing tribe?" But the Darkwing tribe members inside actually replied that there was no one left. "Please do as you please." How could they be so cowardly? Do as you please. I'm coming in." And Lin really didn't understand how the Darkwing tribe members worked. He might as well just barge into the palace. There was no reply from within the myriad star palace. And Lin didn't waste any more time and strode toward the gate. The black bronze gate was tightly shut, and it was filled with an ancient aura. And Lin couldn't be bothered to knock on the gate. With a simple punch, the bronze gate was blasted open. He was here to beat the Darkwing tribe into submission, not to be a guest, so there was naturally no need for formalities. And Lin swaggered into the myriad star palace and was greeted by the sight of 4 powerful Darkwing tribe cultivators standing nearby. All of them had reached the soul formation stage. Boom! A massive spell formation began to appear, encompassing the entire myriad star palace. Boundless darkness invaded the space, and specks of starlight revolved around Enlin with extremely fearsome power. To think that there really is an enemy so stupid that they would dare to barge in. A muscular man chuckled. Isn't this the lowly race known as the humans? Who would have thought that such a lowly race could produce a soul formation stage cultivator? What an eye-opener. A handsome man with long black hair chuckled. Big brother, since you're here, then don't leave. A gentle and beautiful woman winked at Enlin with a faint smile. She was most likely the one who had said that there was no one left in the Darkwing tribe. It was a mystery what she was thinking when she said that. At this moment, the most powerful male on the throne stood up and glared at Enlin with a fierce expression. Offending the Darkwing tribe is tantamount to violating the dignity of the heavens. Go to hell and repent for your sins. Enlin snickered. Offending you is offending the heavens? Since when did you birdmen have the right to represent the heavens? To tell you the truth, I, Enlin, am the spokesperson of the heavens, the only God. Impudent bastard, we are so noble. How could a lowly race like you humiliate us? The Darkwing race cultivators roared with rage, and the Emperor on the throne waved a hand. The spell formation was completely activated, and countless white stars crashed toward Enlin with terrifying, killing intent. You dare to place such a childish array here? How embarrassing! A white light flashed in Enlin's eyes, and he abruptly jabbed at a certain location amidst the countless stars. His chi pierced through the void like a sword. Rumble. The terrifying formation that encompassed the entire Myriad Stars palace suddenly collapsed. The three Darkwing tribe cultivators were dumbstruck, and the Darkwing Emperor involuntarily drew a sharp intake of breath. That was their strongest killing formation. It was broken by a single finger. Die. The burly man abruptly pounced toward Enlin as countless ferocious black wolves appeared around him, all of which were imbued with a thirst for blood and death. The air howled and the earth crumbled in their wake. This was his black wolf domain. Enlin took a step forward, and his body broke through the sound barrier as he charged toward the man's domain with his physical body. What? The man's expression changed drastically when he saw that Enlin had actually torn apart his domain with just his physical body. Enlin launched a punch toward the man, and the man let out an enraged roar as he braced himself and launched a punch of his own. Their fists collided, and the shock waves from the collision caused the Myriad Stars palace to tremble violently. In the end, the man let out an agonizing cry as the bones in his right arm were shattered. He spat out a large mouthful of blood and was sent flying backward. At this moment, the handsome man had already made his move. An azure crescent moon appeared behind him, and it slashed toward Enlin. Blue moon godly slash. Enlin did not dodge. His fist was enveloped in golden light as he unleashed a third of the mountain-quaking fist. Rumble. The golden fist smashed the blue crescent moon with an unstoppable force, and the handsome man was also sent flying with severe injuries. Enlin then turned his gaze toward the gentle and beautiful lady. The lady's countenance turned slightly pale, and she retreated a few steps. She waved her hand and said, "I don't fight. Harmony is the most important." Enlin was speechless. At the next instant, the surroundings were plunged into darkness once again. Countless black shadows rose from the ground, covering up the skies and bringing with them an extremely terrifying sharpness as they encompassed toward Enlin. The strongest expert among the Blackwing race had made his move, and he had unleashed his strongest killing move right off the bat. Enlin let out a cold snort, and extremely scorching flames suddenly rose up around him. Great holy flame, appear. Endless yellow-white divine flames instantly tore the black shadows apart, and the terrifying heat spread out for several hundred meters. Rumble. The explosion of flames flattened the Myriad Stars palace, and even the entire floating continent tremored violently. All of the Darkwing tribe residents stared in shock at the place that was revered as a holy land. Flames rose up from there, illuminating the entire night sky. Ever since Enlin had fought his way to the Myriad Stars palace, many spectators had gathered outside. By the time the myriad stars palace had been blasted into smithereens, there were already thousands of Darkwing tribe members spectating the battle from afar. Amidst the shattered remains of the floating continent, they witnessed a scene that they could not accept. The most powerful emperor of the Darkwing tribe had been pressed into the ground by a human male, and the other three soul formation stage cultivators had also fallen to the ground with injuries. Their once indestructible faith was being shaken for the very first time. Messenger of the heavens? The noblest tribe? Unlin chuckled coldly as he stomped a foot onto the Darkwing Emperor's chest. The heavens have never given you any rights to speak for me. Listen up, there is only one messenger of the gods, and that is me, Enlin. Enlin's voice was like a clap of thunder, exploding throughout the entire floating continent, causing countless Darkwing tribe members to tremble in shock. What? You don't seem convinced? And Lin chuckled as he looked down at the Darkwing Emperor, who was gritting his teeth with an expression of fury and indignation. Don't you think that you are a tribe chosen by the heavens? Now that you're under my foot, why don't you ask the heavens to help you? The Darkwing Emperor forced a smile onto his face. The heavenly Tao has no consciousness. We follow the will of the heavens, so we have no regrets even if we die. You say that you are the messenger of the God of creation, but you have to show some proof. This isn't something that can be won over by just having a bigger fist. Many Darkwing tribe members nodded in agreement upon hearing this. Their pride was not something that could be challenged. Even if their enemy was much more powerful than them, this was not enough to make them lower their noble heads. You want proof? And Lin nodded. That's simple. Simple? The Darkwing Emperor's eyes widened in shock. He felt that Enlin's words were completely absurd. Could the messenger of the gods even produce proof? Could he produce a certificate? Enlin stood proudly as he looked up into the boundless night sky. His white robe billowed in the wind, and his figure was extremely imposing. He pointed a finger toward the sky as he spoke in a clear voice. In the name of the gods, I bless this world with light. Boom! At this moment, the darkness of the night faded. Day returned to heaven and earth. The sun had risen. All of the Darkwing tribe members were dumbstruck. Chapter 661. It was as if someone had said, "Let there be light." It was as if someone had said, "Let there be light," and the world had turned from night to day. What kind of power was this? This was not power at all. This was not something that could be achieved with great power. Only the heavens could achieve this. All of the Darkwing tribe members were dumbstruck. They were extremely sensitive to the power of the stars, so they knew that the power of the stars had completely disappeared. This also proved that the fact that night had turned into day was not a lie. The world had really turned into day. Some of the weaker Darkwing tribe members had already knelt to the ground as their legs gave out from under them. Previously, most of the Darkwing tribe members had scoffed at the notion of being the spokesperson of God. Now, the majority of the clansmen truly believed that only God could do such a thing, a true God. Now, do you have anything else to say? Unlin was like a god standing proudly above the heavens as he looked down at the Darkwing Emperor with a cold expression. The Darkwing Emperor's body trembled slightly. No matter how he denied it, no matter how proud he was, it was all shattered in the face of this miracle. He stood up with difficulty and bowed slightly. Unling of the Darkwing tribe pays his respects to divine spokesperson. Upon seeing this, the rest of the Darkwing tribe members also lowered their noble heads and greeted respectfully in unison. We pay our respects to the divine envoy. Unlin nodded in satisfaction as he looked at the bowing Darkwing tribe cultivators. Remember, he said with a stern expression, I, Enlin, am the only spokesperson of God. The status of the 9 tribes is equal to that of the humans. In the future, God will issue a decree. As long as you carry out God's will, you will receive God's blessings. All of the Darkwing tribe members bowed their heads in agreement upon hearing Enlin's words. Enlin looked up into the sky and stamped his foot down onto the ground. He pointed a finger at the sky as he announced, Now, let the night descend once again. The light in the sky faded as his voice fell. The sky turned into night again, and the dazzling starry sky appeared once again as the power of the stars descended upon the world. Countless Darkwing tribe cultivators were stunned by this miraculous scene, and their eyes became even more scorching and yearning as they looked at Enlin. That was the spokesperson of God, the life form closest to this world. If they were to get closer to him, wouldn't that be the same as getting closer to this world? The Darkwing race actually had an instinctive yearning for the sky, and this instinct was magnified immensely upon seeing Enlin. Even the emperor of the Amling Empire no longer looked at Enlin with hatred. Instead, his gaze was filled with fanaticism and respect. He suddenly said, "From today onward, if divine spokesperson Enlin has any requests, the Darkwing tribe will be willing to risk our lives to assist you." All of the Darkwing tribe cultivators replied in unison, "We are willing to die for him." Enlin's heart jolted. He hadn't expected the Darkwing tribe's attitude to change so quickly. His expression was calm as he nodded and said, "All right, your performance is not bad. I came here to make you realize the reality. I will come again in the future." His body transformed into a cloud of mist and disappeared as he spoke. All of the Darkwing tribe cultivators revered Enlin as if he were a god, and they all bowed respectfully in the direction of his disappearing figure. In the air, several kilometers away from the floating continent, Enlin's figure reappeared. He heaved a long sigh of relief as a sense of elation washed over his entire body. "Little Na, it was great to have your cooperation. Even I can't help but give myself full marks for that performance." Enlin praised. "Hee, as long as you're happy, Giant Enlin. This level of performance is nothing to me." Tina's pleasant voice sounded beside his ear. She was clearly having a lot of fun as well. "What's next? Which tribe should we go to?" Let's go to the Dragon tribe." Thus, within the luxurious Dragon Palace, Enlin manipulated countless bolts of lightning in front of all of the dragons, and the Dragon tribe was completely won over. On an island that was enshrouded in holy clouds, Enlin overturned the ocean and caused the sun and moon to rotate in front of a group of mermaids, handsome fish, and turtles. He had truly stepped onto the divine altar and was revered as the priest of God. In a region where countless sharp mountain peaks towered into the clouds, Enlin stepped forward, and the earth quaked as he soared into the heavens. The golden power of the earth enshrouded his body, making him appear as if he were a giant that could shake heaven and earth. All of the Stone Tribe cultivators gave Enlin a thumbs up. At the Holy Martial Clan drill ground, one Holy Martial Clan powerful being after another jumped out to challenge Enlin to a one-on-one battle. However, they were all crushed by Enlin, and this tribe was completely subdued. In the harsh environment of the border region, Enlin displayed a frying pan dish in front of the true Demon Tribe cultivators. General Hong Tsang and the other true Demon Tribe cultivators had tears streaming down their faces as they ate. All of the true Demon Tribe cultivators felt that this dish could only be found in the heavens, and there was no doubt that Enlin was the spokesperson of God. Beside a vast spirit lake, Enlin explained to all of the snake spirits how living beings could live in harmony with nature. Not only was he extremely attuned to the Tao of life, but he was also able to create a spirit land with ease, which all of the snake spirits worshipped. The Vermilion Bird Tribe was a bit more difficult to communicate with. Firstly, they were extremely proud and disrespectful to heaven and earth. Secondly, they were quite unrestrained and liked freedom. Their population was very scattered, and they didn't have any fixed tribes. Thinking back, Enlin and Tina had to forcefully capture the Vermilion Bird Tribe firebirds and mate with them. Only then were they able to give birth to offspring. In the end, Enlin had to ask Tina to cooperate and forcefully drag several thousand Vermilion Bird Tribe firebirds to a certain place using her spatial manipulation technique. There was no helping it. If he had to find them one by one, Enlin would die of exhaustion. Enlin suddenly appeared amid the thousands of dumbstruck firebirds. His body was enshrouded in the holy vermilion flames, and he clasped his hands behind his back like a high and mighty god as he announced to the thousands of firebirds, "My name is Enlin, and I used a spell technique to summon all of you here to tell you that I am now the spokesperson of God. Let's get to know each other first. All of the firebirds. It had to be said that the holy vermilion flames were very useful. All of the firebirds were cursing in their hearts, but for some reason, they were still struck by a sense of reverence and awe toward the flames around Enlin's body. Enlin could borrow the power of the holy vermilion flames for a short period of time, which was the power of their ancestor, so these proud firebirds were just barely able to accept Enlin's existence. Thus, spokesperson Enlin successfully traveled through the 9 tribes and the human race, leaving behind an indelible mark in the hearts of all of the 9 tribes. Time slowly passed by. Tina's time acceleration could only be maintained at a speed of 1,000-fold, and Enlin would visit the 9 tribes from time to time to make his presence known. He would also occasionally beat up a few rebellious firebirds, but he didn't make any announcements. 3 years later, lightning suddenly crackled in the celestial ground that Tina had created. Vital energy surged and 5-colored light erupted for tens of thousands of feet. Giant Enlin, I'll take you to the celestial ground. A treasure nurtured by heaven and earth has appeared. Tina's elated and excited voice sounded, and Enlin shuddered as he drank tea with Adam and Eve. Chapter 662. A treasure nurtured by heaven and earth? This was the first time this had ever happened. Enlin was extremely excited. This was the first time Tina had told him about a treasure descending upon this world, and it had appeared in the celestial ground, which was much earlier than he had anticipated. Let's go. Take me there. He suddenly stood up. Then, under the watchful eyes of Adam and Eve, his body slowly dissipated into specks of gold. As expected of divine spokesperson Enlin, the way he left was truly eye-opening. Eve's eyes glowed with envy as she stared at the man who had come and gone like the wind. Enlin was still in Chi Lu City 1 second, and in the next he had arrived at a mysterious place on the continent. This place was separated by the laws of heaven and earth, so even though it existed in this world, it was also separated from the rest of the world. Let's go, Giant Enlin. Tina held onto Enlin's hand with a wide grin as the two of them ran toward a certain direction. The two of them passed through a meadow of fresh flowers. The fragrance of flowers wafted through the air, and butterflies danced in the air. A few small white beasts were scared away by the sudden commotion, and a gray bear with a powerful aura picked its nose in confusion. Enlin and Tina ran for a short distance before arriving at an area that was littered with 5-colored crystals. Wow, is that the rock in the middle? Enlin pointed at the ordinary-looking rock at the center of the crystals with excitement in his eyes. There were so many beautiful crystals surrounding it, so it was far too different from the rest. Even if it didn't have any special characteristics, it still stood out from the rest. Yes, that's it. Tina waved a hand, and the round black and white rock landed in her palm. Enlin also laid a hand on it to find that its surface was a little rough, and it was no different from a rock on the side of the road. Furthermore, he couldn't sense any energy fluctuations from it. What is this? Is it really a treasure? Enlin was perplexed. Don't worry, I haven't consecrated it yet. Tina replied with a serious expression. Consecrated it. Enlin's lips twitched. Are you serious? Of course I'm serious. Tina nodded with a serious expression. Her gem-like eyes shone brightly as she held the stone in her hands and began to chant something. Enlin, a few seconds later, a pillar of golden light descended from the sky and enveloped Enlin and Tina. The black and white stones suddenly shattered, and the broken stone pieces fell off. A crystal-clear, spotlessly white bead appeared before the two of them. Enlin stared at the bead. Although it was pure and translucent, upon closer inspection, he could see many different colors within it. It was holy and flawless, yet dreamy and mesmerizing at the same time, making one feel as if they were falling into a trance. What do you think? I've been blessed. Isn't it different now? Tina asked with a smug expression. Enlin took a deep breath and said, I think even a pig can become more powerful than Zhu Beiji after being blessed by the god of creation, right? Tina could tell what Enlin was implying, and she pouted. What do you mean? This stone was a treasure to begin with. I've only awakened it earlier than expected. and Lin stroked Tina's soft golden hair with a smile on his face. All right, I trust little Na. Hurry up and tell me what this treasure is used for. Tina's interest was immediately piqued at the mention of treasures, and all of her previous frustrations were completely forgotten. She held the white bead in her hands, and a mesmerizing smile appeared on her face as she stared at Lin with a scorching light in her eyes. Why don't you give a try first? And Lin's expression shifted slightly as a sense of foreboding welled up in his heart. Ow! Stand here and don't move, then I'll get away from you. Tina retreated over 100 meters like a feather. And Lin felt like this sentence was a little familiar, but he didn't think too much about it. He stood obediently on the spot and stared at Tina's retreating figure. Please take this, Giant Lin. Tina suddenly turned around before hurling the white ball toward Lin. The white ball pierced through space before crashing directly toward Lin. And Lin's pupils contracted, and he was just about to react, but the ball was simply too fast. He didn't even have a chance to evade before his body was struck by the white ball. The terrifying impact that he was anticipating didn't occur. The white ball crashed into Lin's stomach before landing on the ground like a naughty girl who had tossed a ball at Lin. And Lin, he was just about to say something when he heard Tina burst into laughter before pointing a finger at Lin. Get into the ball. And Lin. A crack suddenly appeared on the white ball, and a colorful light erupted from within before enshrouding Lin within. Then, the space around him began to warp. And Lin was completely defenseless, and he was instantly transported into a vast expanse of white space. And Lin stared at the space before him with astonishment on his face. Could this be? That's right, you've been sealed in the ball. Tina's pleasant voice sounded. And Lin, for some reason, he was struck by a sense of deja vu. Was this AF * King Pokeball? It had to be, right? Was she trying to bully him because he hadn't seen Pokemon before? He wasn't a Pokemon. If he really wanted to play, he could go capture a Pikachu. And Lin's expression darkened. He felt like he had become Tina's pet. And then, little now, what else can this ball do? It's useless. This is a high-grade spatial artifact that can imprison enemies in this space. After that, I can project my power into this space to attack my enemies. Tina explained. What are the conditions? And Lin continued. Tina fell into deep thought before replying. As long as your cultivation base is higher than your enemies, you can use this ball to trap them. And Lin's chest constricted, and he almost threw up a mouthful of blood. He could only use this ball to trap his enemy with a higher cultivation base? What a joke. He was a super freak who could kill enemies of a higher cultivation base than him. Why the F***CK would he take an opponent with a lower cultivation base than him seriously? I can instantly kill an existence that can suck the enemy into the ball. Okay. Great. Another useless treasure. However, it seemed like Tina could use it for herself. Taking a return to Void Stage, Cultivator wasn't a bad deal. And Lin asked Tina to release him with a disappointed expression. He didn't take the white ball. Instead, he told Tina to play with it. Giant and Lin, what do you think we should name this treasure? Tina asked with elation as she held the white ball in her hands. She was clearly very fond of it. Let's call it Pokeball, and Lin replied expressionlessly. Pokeball. Tina's eyes lit up with a smile. I'm a fairy, and my ball contains my pet. What a good name. As expected of a prodigy, and Lin's lips twitched as he chuckled along with her. Just like that, the first treasure of this world, the Pokeball, fell into the hands of Goddess of Creation Tina. Chapter 663. And Lin and Tina made their way out of the Holy Ground cultivation base. Aside from that treasure, there were only some spirit fruits and spirit medicines, but there were no immortal rank treasures. They didn't harvest any of those spirit items. Instead, they chose to preserve their spiritual aura in hopes that those items would evolve again after being baptized by time. Tina and Lin left the divine mirror world together after making their way out of the celestial ground. A faint light flashed past, and Lin slowly opened his eyes to find that he was lying on the city wall. There were defensive spell formations set up around him. This should be the designated return point. A beautiful woman was sitting in front of him with her hands resting on her cheeks as she looked out at the boundless black earth in the distance. She twirled a few strands of hair around her with a bored expression on her face, and she looked just as beautiful as ever. Lin was a little entranced and only slowly got up after a long while. Tina had already fallen into a deep sleep beside him, and his sudden movement attracted Su Xiaolan's attention. Su Xiaolan turned to Lin with a smile. "You're finally back. How does it feel to enter that world with your physical body?" Lin smiled. "It feels great. It's the same feeling as when I went to the ancient Taichu realm, and because of Little Na, I can do whatever I want." Little Na said that she can try to teleport you guys into that world as well when she's more familiar with the teleportation technique. That world has a different kind of excitement to it. "Sure, I'm looking forward to that day." Su Xiaolan had wanted to enter that world for a long time. She was very interested in a brand new world. "By the way, how many days have I been in that world?" 2.5 days. Sigh, half of the end-of-term examinations have already passed. There's basically nothing left for us to do now. If everything goes according to plan, we'll be standing guard on the city wall until the end of the examinations. I wonder how little Ku and Mai are doing. Are they the new blood tribe underlings you mentioned? I really want to see them." The two of them chatted on top of the city wall. The night breeze blew past, making the atmosphere particularly pleasant. At the same time, in the center of the dark marshlands, bolts of golden void lightning fell from the sky, creating a thunderous boom akin to the roar of a massive dragon. Not long after, the thunderclouds began to disperse. A man with short golden hair and a delicate face stood up on the blood-colored altar. There was an unconcealable joy on his face. The sacred leader's blood is indeed useful. I've really avoided the blood demon tribulation. Merlin, Cassidy made her way toward him with a smile on her face. "Congratulations on your successful tribulation transcendence." "Congratulations." Tobias also stepped forward to offer his congratulations. The golden-haired man was none other than Merlin, who had successfully progressed to the return to void intermediate stage. Merlin could sense the vast power surging through his body, and he exclaimed with excitement, "We really are different. My life force has been elevated to a higher level, and we're different from those lowly blood tribe cultivators." "Shoo, keep your voice down," Cassidy chided. They were currently in the holy land of the blood tribe. This was the true holy land, the place where the blood tribe patriarchs cultivated. This place contained opportunities that were unimaginable to normal blood tribe cultivators, and only the holy disciples had the right to cultivate or search for opportunities here. Merlin had found his opportunity here, and he was only able to make his breakthrough after his body had been purified by the sacred leader's blood. "Did anything happen while I was in seclusion?" An awkward smile appeared on Merlin's face. "Something earth-shattering has happened." Cassidy furrowed her brows in a mysterious manner. "Emperor Mang and Emperor Tian Huang of the Celestial Court battled in our dark marshlands. Who do you think is the source of this incident?" Merlin drew a sharp intake of breath. A battle between two Dao integration stage super mighty figures was something that only happened once every 100 years, so it had to be a very important event. He couldn't wait to say, "Don't keep me guessing. Tell me, tell me." This incident was triggered by the death of the Dark Poison Lord. After that, Layden went to avenge the Dark Poison Lord. In the end, he encountered a black dragon and a soul formation stage man riding atop a black brick at Huang Quan City. Cassidy recounted in a slow voice. Merlin's breathing had already become heavier and heavier upon hearing this. At this moment, Tobias spoke. "According to the information provided by our scouts at Huang Quan City, the battle at the time was extremely intense. Layden was pummeled to the point of exploding by that mysterious man, and he was in an extremely pitiful state. News of this has spread like wildfire throughout the blood tribe, and his reputation has been completely tarnished." Even though Tobias was saying that Layden was in a very pitiful state, he couldn't help but burst into laughter. After that, Layden was hunted down by Emperor Tian Huang for over 10,000 kilometers. Even though he managed to escape with his life, he was severely wounded and his Tao foundation was injured as well. He's currently in seclusion to recover from his injuries. Should we do something? Cassidy's eyes lit up with excitement. So it's the Holy Leader. The Holy Leader is mighty. Merlin immediately knew who they were talking about, and he exclaimed with excitement on his face. A black dragon riding atop a black brick, and a soul formation stage cultivator who pummeled the crap out of Layden. Only their Holy Leader and Lyn could do such a thing. Do you mean visit Layden? Tobias' eyes flashed as he asked in a low voice. That's right. Even though he was taught a lesson by the Holy Leader, he's still very resentful, and he won't rest until he's dead. It's best to eliminate an enemy like him as soon as possible. Cassidy was truly thinking for Lyn's sake. She had considered this matter for a long time, but she still hadn't changed her mind. However, Merlin shook his head. There's no hurry. What I'm worried about is that if we kill the young one, the old one will come after us. Emperor Yi Deng dotes on Layden the most, so if Layden is killed, Emperor Yi Deng will definitely be enraged. Furthermore, Emperor Yi Deng is far too powerful, so if we go too far and get discovered, we'll all be screwed. I think we should discuss this matter with the Holy Leader before making a decision. Seeing as that's the case, let's use the excuse of stabilizing the development of our sect to leave the Holy Land for a while before meeting up with the Holy Leader in secret, Tobias suggested. All right, I'll bring the cursed star bloodsword. Cassidy nodded. Then I'll also bring the dead spirit bead. Merlin chimed in. I'll bring a drop of the blood patriarch's blood, Tobias replied. All three of them were holy disciples, and they had all encountered many opportunities in the Holy Land. Now, they were going to bring their treasures and follow Lyn to battle again. Dark marshlands, purple snow mountain. A gargantuan crimson formation stretched for over 50 kilometers. The naked man meditated atop the formation, and a steady stream of blood energy converged toward his body to repair his injuries. However, a certain power of the divine Tao, which was the purest form of yang energy, was relentlessly corroding his body like a bone-deep ulcer. The latest information had arrived, and the man already knew who had reduced him to this state. Lyn, I'm going to kill you. Chapter 664. Within the dark marshlands, 3 black mosquitoes concealed their auras as they flew toward the gargantuan city on the ground. Their bodies were completely inky black, and they pierced through space. They appeared to be moving very slowly, but they were actually flying toward their destination at an extremely fast speed. All of a sudden, a pair of eyes flashing with lightning appeared in the sky. That pair of eyes seemed to be imbued with peerless lightning, as if it were an immortal spirit that ruled over all lightning looking down upon ants. The terrifying might emanating from that pair of eyes seemed to be threatening to annihilate the 3 mosquitoes. The 3 mosquitoes were scared **Kless and froze on the spot, not daring to move. Hold on, Senior. We are Lyn's servants. One of the mosquitoes reacted extremely quickly and explained in a respectful voice. The pair of intimidating eyes stared at them for a moment before disappearing, as if nothing had happened. The 3 mosquitoes heaved a collective sigh of relief and looked at one another with lingering fear in their hearts before continuing toward Huang Quan City. The weather was quite good today, and the sun was shining brightly. Lyn stood outside Huang Quan City, facing an extremely handsome man. Then, a few hundred meters away, there were a lot of onlookers looking nervously at the 2 men in the middle. Big Brother Chung, don't panic. Lyn pulled out his chaotic alloy brick. Xin Yuan Chung looked at Lyn with a speechless expression. Please don't panic, classmate Lyn. Your skin is so thick, you really won't die from the explosion. It's not the same. Even if I don't die from the explosion, it'll still hurt. I'm very sensitive, Lyn retorted. Big Brother Chung, slowly unleash your domain. Imagine the beautiful world in your heart and recite the core values of socialism. Don't get too excited. He spoke with a serious expression. Xin Yuan Chung felt like he had nothing better to do anyway, so he might as well ask Lyn for help in perfecting his domain. After all, once one reached the soul formation stage, their domain would be completely fixed. He wanted to see if he could reverse the style of his domain. Xin Yuan Cheng's heart stirred, and a white energy instantly enshrouded an area with a radius of over 1,000 feet. The domain was like a viscous barrier of air. It was like a cloud and mist that changed unpredictably. It contained a realm of the birth of all living beings and carried an extremely strong aura of life. The dry and cracked ground was affected by this domain. Small green sprouts sprouted, creating a scene of peace and vitality. Lin poked his head out from the top of the black brick and encouraged, "Very good. Maintain this state of mind and don't get angry. Big Brother Chung, this is exactly what you're lacking." When some of the female students saw Xin Yuan Cheng's white robes fluttering in the wind, they couldn't help but be fascinated by him. In terms of looks, Big Brother Chung was definitely the most handsome person in the United University of Cultivation. And Lin gulped and didn't dare to slack off. "Then, Big Brother Chung, I'll increase my strength." "All right, Student Lin, you do it." Xin Yuan Cheng's breathing was a little hurried, and he was obviously a little nervous. "Take this, Big Brother Chung." And Lin roared as he launched a fist toward Xin Yuan Cheng. The fist tore through the air toward Xin Yuan Cheng. Xin Yuan Cheng unleashed his Tao of myriad spirit Tai Chi to deflect Lin's attack, blasting a crater several dozen meters in diameter into the ground behind him. "Student Lin, don't hold back. Put more power into it." "All right, Big Brother Chung. Hang in there. I'm going to put more power into it." Bam, bam, bam. And Lin began to activate his Earth Lotus Supreme skill, and bursts of golden light exploded forth. Xin Yuan Cheng swung his long sword through the air to defend against Lin's ferocious attacks. He would occasionally retaliate, but his sword was unable to slice through Lin's body. "Big Brother Cheng, I'm going to electrocute you." Boom! A bolt of lightning appeared out of thin air. Xin Yuan Cheng was unable to evade in time, and his left shoulder was punctured by the bolt of lightning. His clothes were torn to shreds, and his skin was charred black. And Lin's heart throbbed as he sensed this explosive power, and he really wanted to unleash a devastating attack of his own. However, he forcibly repressed this urge. And Lin gripped the black brick with one hand, while unleashing spell techniques with the other. Xin Yuan Cheng was being dominated by Lin this entire time, and his domain was slowly becoming unstable. "Big Brother Cheng, calm down and take deep breaths." And Lin cautioned, "Don't say anything. Hit me." Xin Yuan Cheng's eyes burned with a scorching light, and Lin was terrified upon seeing Xin Yuan Cheng's current state, and he didn't dare to exert any more force into his attacks. He unwittingly relaxed a little, and even the amount of divine sense he was using to control the black brick also began to increase. "Student Lin, why are you becoming more and more gentle? I want an attack that's as aggressive as fire. I want to fight to my heart's content." Xin Yuan Cheng began to attack more and more frequently, and his intricate sword strikes were imbued with golden light that enshrouded Lin's body. The sharp sword strikes pulverized the earth around them, and their power became more and more fearsome. In the face of Xin Yuan Cheng's unreasonable demands, Lin gritted his teeth and decided to comply after a brief internal struggle. "Big Brother Cheng, I'm going to be a little more violent from now on, so be careful. Bring it on." Xin Yuan Cheng felt like he was in a very good state, and his control over his domain had improved significantly. However, right at this moment, a scorching arrow of flames pierced through the air, leaving a twisted trajectory in its wake as it pierced through Xin Yuan Cheng's domain before striking his chest. Xin Yuan Cheng reacted extremely quickly, and his sword was like flowing white water that deflected everything in its path. However, in the instant that his long sword came into contact with the arrow of flames, scorching flames instantly spread along the blade of the sword before enveloping Xin Yuan Cheng's body. Light and heat wreaked havoc, and an aura of violence and destruction violently stimulated Xin Yuan Cheng's body. It was as if he had been struck by a certain sensitive nerve, and his entire body began to tremble uncontrollably. Just as all of the students were watching the intense battle unfold, 3 mosquitoes flew toward the battlefield in a stealthy manner. "Wow, The holy leader's clothes have been sliced open. His body is so hot. Mosquito Ku exclaimed. Keep your voice down, Cassidy. We're going to give the holy leader a surprise. Mosquito Mai urged. Mosquito Ta was a little hesitant. Won't our sudden appearance scare the holy leader? I think it's better for us to appear out in the open. It feels a little weird like this. That won't happen. If we hug the holy leader like this, we'll even be able to kiss his skin. Mosquito Ku spoke in a gentle voice that was filled with scorching emotions. Brilliant. So that's what you're planning, Cassidy. I was wondering why you suggested appearing before the holy leader as a mosquito. Mosquito Mai buzzed with approval. Mosquito Ta thought about it for a moment, but he was still unable to resist the temptation of the holy blood, so he chose to remain silent. Thus, the three mosquitoes slowly approached Enlin and entered the battlefield. Enlin, I can't hold back anymore. A loud shout suddenly sounded, carrying a type of hearty emotion that wanted to be released, giving the three mosquitoes a fright. Immediately afterward, a boundless explosion of flames engulfed the three mosquitoes. Boom! An earth-shattering boom erupted into the heavens, and the earth tremored violently. The destructive explosion pulverized the ground within a radius of over a kilometer, and the terrifying shockwaves caused the earth to rise into the air. A fiery mushroom cloud finally appeared on the ground. Chapter 665. All of the students were already prepared, and they unleashed all types of defensive spell techniques in the instant that the explosion erupted. They were situated at the edge of the explosion, so they received the least amount of damage. Enlin, who was situated at the center of the explosion, was given a huge fright. Thankfully, he had the chaotic alloy brick and reacted extremely quickly, allowing him to hide behind the black brick in the instant that Big Brother Chung self-detonated. The destructive explosion came and went just as quickly. When everyone turned their eyes toward the center of the battle again, the mushroom cloud had already been destroyed by Xian Yuan Chang's spell techniques. His handsome face was completely black, and his white robe was in tatters. He coughed as he made his way toward Enlin. Classmate Enlin, are you all right? Enlin poked his head out from behind the black brick. There was some dust on his face, but he wasn't injured. He shook his head. I'm fine. But are you injured, Big Brother Chung? Xian Yuan Chung shook his head with a smile. I can still fight. Enlin's face convulsed slightly. You're still going to fight. Cough, cough, cough. A crisp cough suddenly sounded, as if someone had choked on a cloud of dust. Enlin and Xian Yuan Chung were both given a fright by this cough. They immediately turned toward an area about 10 meters away from them, upon which they discovered three unidentified red-robed figures sprawled on the ground. Who's there? Enlin immediately pulled out his evil-slaying sword at the sight of these unidentified red-robed figures. However, he suddenly felt a certain connection. This was the type of connection that he had overlooked due to his nervousness. It was a contractual connection. It's me, holy leader, a woman who was covered in dust, but still couldn't hide her stunning beauty, stood up from the ground and smiled with some embarrassment. Long time no see, holy leader. I didn't think we would meet here. Merlin also extended a greeting with a smile. That's right, holy leader. What a coincidence. What a splendid, welcoming ceremony. Tobias chuckled awkwardly, but he was still very polite. Enlin, why are you guys here? The arrival of the three servants interrupted the competition. In the courtyard of the city lord of Huang Quan City, Dabai, Xiao Chou, Su Xiaolan, and Xian Yuan Cheng were looking at the three extraordinary beings before them with curiosity and excitement on their faces. Are you the blood-breeds who signed a slave contract with Enlin? Su Xiaolan's gaze swept across the three blood-breeds, and a hint of dignity appeared on her beautiful face. Yes, my name is Cassidy. Greetings, Saintess. Merlin pays his respects to the Holy Maiden. Tobias pays his respects to the Holy Maiden. When the three of them saw Su Xiaolan, they saluted at the same time. What the hell is a Saintess? Su Xiaolan's beautiful eyes widened in shock. Enlin is our holy leader, so you're naturally our Holy Maiden. The Holy Leader and Holy Maiden are a match made in heaven. Cassidy replied with a serious expression. A faint blush appeared on Su Xiaolan's face, and she glowered at Enlin with an angry expression, as if she was blaming Enlin's underling for being so direct with his words. The flying sword god massaged his brows. Speaking of which, weren't you two chosen to be the holy disciples of the blood tribe? Is it really appropriate to refer to Enlin and Su Xiaolan as such? I feel like our relationship is a little messy. There was something else that he didn't say. From the way they were referring to each other, it sounded like the holy leader and holy maiden had given birth to a holy disciple. What a harmonious family. Tui, the so-called holy disciple, is nothing. It's just an empty title. We only follow Master and are proud to be Master's underlings. Tobias spoke with a heroic expression. Gasp! Everyone drew a sharp intake of breath upon hearing this. Were Enlin's servants all this loyal? Waves of shock surged through the flying sword god's heart as an expression of incredulity appeared on his face. These were the holy disciples of the blood tribe. They were beings who had been acknowledged by the blood patriarch, and their status in the blood tribe was comparable to that of a Dao integration stage super mighty figure. Xinyuan Cheng, Su Qinyun, and the others had also heard of the legends of the holy disciples of the blood tribe, but they didn't think that the three new holy disciples would all be Enlin's servants, and they viewed fame and fortune as nothing more than **T. Their mouths gaped open involuntarily upon seeing this, and they felt as if their horizons had been broadened. Enlin spoke with a smile. In any case, it's fantastic news that you were able to become the holy disciples, so I'll have to congratulate you in advance. Cassidy's seductive eyes twinkled as she asked in a gentle voice. Then, holy leader, seeing as you've already congratulated us, would you like to give us a piece of good news as well? Merlin and Tobias' eyes lit up at the same time, and they nodded emphatically. Yes, yes, yes. That's a good idea. Enlin knew what they wanted, but a hesitant expression appeared on his face. Do you know how the Dark Poison Lord died? You killed him? Cassidy didn't know why Enlin was suddenly asking this, but she still made a guess after a moment of hesitation. No, he was poisoned to death by his own blood. Enlin replied with a solemn expression. Cassidy, Merlin, and Tobias, could it be that the Dark Poison Lord was too weak? Tobias asked with difficulty. Or maybe it's because I've become more powerful. Enlin looked at the three of them with a serious expression. My blood purification ability is too powerful, so you might not be able to handle it either. Everyone fell silent again. This was a matter of life and death, so they had to consider this carefully. I think we should find a blood tribe mighty figure to test out our firepower first. Merlin spoke in a solemn voice. The Dark Poison Lord is only at the Return to Void initial stage, so we should find a mighty figure at the pinnacle of the Return to Void initial stage or Return to Void intermediate stage to test out our firepower. Tobias said, I have suitable candidates in the Divine Disc League. Enlin also wanted to know what was going on with his blood, so he nodded. How about this? I'll give Little Ku and Little My 5 milliliters of holy blood each, and you'll give Tobias 10 milliliters of holy blood. You guys can test it out first, and you can also recruit powerful holy blood cult candidates from the blood tribe. Cassidy, Merlin, and Tobias' bodies trembled with excitement. We're willing to die for the holy leader. To be able to obtain so much divine blood was far beyond their expectations. Sword Immortal Ling Xiao, Xinyuan Cheng, Su Qinyun, and the others all stared at the conversation taking place before them with dumbstruck expressions. They could understand everything that was being said, but they had no idea what they were talking about. What Saint Blood? What developing the downline? It sounded so high-end. By the way, holy leader, there's something else, Cassidy suddenly said. What is it? It's about Layden. He's been severely wounded and is currently recuperating on the Purple Snow Mountain. Everyone's hearts jolted upon hearing this information. It could be said that Layden was a man who had brought them nightmarish experiences. He possessed a super powerful being at the Return to Void pinnacle stage, and he could destroy an entire city with a wave of his hand. If it weren't for Xiao Zhe and Enlin fighting for their lives, they would have most likely all perished in Huangquan City. Enlin had never been one to back down. His disciple had been bullied so badly by Layden, so he was naturally going to return the favor. What do you think, holy leader? Tobias turned to Enlin to see what Enlin was thinking. Hee, this is a good opportunity. We can't let slip by. Enlin's eyes flashed with monstrous battle intent. Chapter 666. Enlin, don't forget that Layden is the son of Emperor Yi Deng. Su Xiaolan's brows furrowed slightly as she spoke with a concerned expression. She believed that Enlin had the power to fight Layden, but the fact that Layden had a Dao integration stage super mighty figure backing him was simply too terrifying. There's nothing I can do. There are so many people in Huangquan City, and my identity will be exposed sooner or later. Even if I don't go looking for them, they'll come looking for me anyway, so I might as well take advantage of this opportunity and take down one boss at a time. Enlin was quite open-minded about this, and his fighting spirit soared. Then what do we do? Layden has many life-saving trump cards, and even Emperor Tian Huang would find it difficult to kill him in a short time. What we have to do to kill him? Don't forget that Layden is located in the central region of the Dark Marshlands. You have to kill him before reinforcements arrive while concealing your identities. I hope you can reconsider just how powerful this task will be. The Flying Sword God was aware of the situation, and it was exactly because of this that he didn't want Enlin to take this risk. This was indeed a very difficult mission. Even though Layden was severely wounded, he was still a powerful being at the Return to Void Pinnacle stage. He would most likely be able to unleash his full power for a short period of time, so killing him would not be an easy task. How about we use our holy blood to recruit him into our church? Merlin suggested after a brief hesitation. Enlin immediately shook his head. No, our holy blood church is not a place that just anyone can join. Layden almost killed my friend and disciple, so he can only die. How domineering. The three blood tribe cultivators shuddered as they stared at Enlin with scorching eyes, as if his entire body was glowing with light. Cassidy spoke. I obtained the cursed star blood sword from the Holy Land. It can temporarily suppress Layden's monstrous life force and deprive him of his blood rebirth ability. Merlin also spoke. I obtained the Dead Spirit bead from the Holy Land. It can use the power of one's consciousness to unleash an extremely powerful trapping formation. Even if Layden were to use his power of the Divine Tao, he would find it difficult to break out of it in a short time. Tobias also spoke with a serious expression. I have a drop of the Blood Patriarch's blood, and I can fuse it into a spell technique. Using my status as a holy disciple, I can borrow the power of the Blood Patriarch to unleash an attack comparable to that of a Dao integration stage mighty figure. When everyone heard this, their spirits were lifted. So you have such a bad *SS treasure? Enlin was astonished. The three Blood Clan underlings were delighted to receive the Sacred Lord's praise. Using a treasure obtained from a holy land to deal with the most popular candidate for the position of holy disciple. What an impressive move. Su Xiaolan also felt that fate was an indescribable thing, and she praised. The three Blood Clan underlings were all smiles after receiving the saint's praise. So many powerful trump cards, including the enfeeblement, control, and execution techniques. Our plan to kill Layden is finally going to be a success. Enlin's eyes lit up with excitement. He was clearly unable to repress the excitement in his heart. But very quickly, he fell silent again. No, the problem of concealment is a little difficult to solve. If your actions are discovered by others, you won't be able to stay in the Dark Marshlands anymore. It's a rare opportunity to become a saint. We can't waste it. The three of them instantly became anxious upon hearing this. All enemies who violate the holy leader must die. This is a principle, Tobias replied. That's right. Cassidy nodded in agreement. Holy leader, we're willing to make such a small sacrifice for you. How can these opportunities compare to the opportunity to follow the holy leader? We're willing to do so. Merlin also spoke with a serious expression. Enlin didn't say anything. Just because the three Blood Clan underlings didn't mind, it didn't mean that he didn't mind. He knew very well what this opportunity to become a holy disciple meant to the Blood Tribe mighty figures. This was an opportunity that even Dao integration stage mighty figures would be envious of. Even if his underlings were willing to follow him to the celestial court after completing this mission, he couldn't bring himself to do so. Just as he was fretting over how to make things more discreet, a white crane suddenly flew down from the sky above the courtyard. Whoosh whoosh. The cry of a crane broke the silence. And Lin and the others looked up into the sky to discover that the white crane was circling in the air above the courtyard. It was a graceful bird with a pristine white body. Its white feathers shimmered under the sunlight, giving it a sense of nobility and ethereality. That's right, this white crane was very beautiful, provided that one ignored its eyes that were larger than watermelons. Everyone stared at this strange-looking white crane as if there were 10,000 alpacas stampeding over their hearts. This was far too bizarre, and Lin suddenly came to a realization upon seeing this white crane, and he immediately realized who the owner of this white crane was. There was no helping it. This was a unique characteristic. Bam! The white crane suddenly exploded into a puddle of ink. A pair of watermelon-sized eyes fell to the ground and rolled over to Lin's feet before blinking innocently. This was a very demonic scene. Be careful. Holy leader, that's a bomb. What kind of freak dares to pull such a stunt here? Hurry, we have to get away from those eyes. It must be some kind of curse technique. 3 Blood Tribe cultivators rushed in front of Lin and shielded him from the pair of eyes with grave expressions. There's no need. Aside from being a little ugly, I feel like it's harmless. And Lin pushed aside the 3 people in front of him and picked up the pair of large eyes. This was undoubtedly the work of Lin Junjun, the piggy bank girl. No, holy leader, danger. However, they had only just finished speaking when the pair of eyes exploded. Bam! Everyone drew a sharp intake of breath upon seeing this. 10 black robes with a label on them suddenly appeared before everyone's eyes. One-time concealment robes, able to resist the pollution of the dark marshlands and escape detection by Dao integration stage mighty figures. Exclusive to the Celestial Arch. Shelf life of 3 days. And Lin recited the description on the label. Everyone was dumbstruck, and they couldn't believe their ears. Classmate Lin, what did you say? Exclusive to the Celestial Arch. Xin Yuan Cheng was astonished. These aura concealment robes really are timely help. Could it be that the Celestial Arch already knows what we're trying to do? Is he really that powerful? Flying Sword God was in disbelief. At this moment, Cassidy was a little hesitant. I think our arrival must have been discovered by a certain mighty figure from your celestial court, which is why they were able to deduce this. She told everyone about her encounter with those terrifying eyes when she transformed into a mosquito. Everyone came to a sudden realization upon hearing this. So Emperor Tian Huang found out about this and informed the Celestial Arch. It looks like the Celestial Court has given their tacit approval for this operation. They're even airdropping equipment, so they must have given their tacit approval. And should we do it? Let's do it. What's there to be afraid of? This is a rare opportunity. After a short discussion, Lin and the others came to an agreement, and the plan to assassinate Layden officially began. Chapter 667. Heavenly Courts, in a side hall of the Royal Extreme Sky Hall. A beautiful woman held a paintbrush in her hand, and a certain image on a piece of white paper slowly disappeared. Father, Lin has already obtained those stealth robes, but are you really not going to do anything? What if we fail? He's a mighty figure at the return to Void Pinnacle stage. The woman's brows were furrowed with concern. A faint smile appeared on the yellow-robed man's face. Don't worry, little Z. Don't you trust him? A faint blush appeared on the young woman's face. I'm not worried about him. Also, why should I trust him? I'm just worried that he'll die before we can obtain any information about the Purple Star ruins. The middle-aged man couldn't be bothered to respond to his daughter's explanation. It's not that we don't want to help him, Lin. It's just that if a Dao integration stage true God steps in, things will become more complicated. If the Blood Tribe decides to pursue this matter, it'll only bring harm to Lin. However, if this is a battle between juniors, then even if Layden dies, Emperor Yi Deng won't be able to do anything about it. Of course, if Emperor Yi Deng really wants to intervene, then the Celestial Court won't be able to hold back. Has Uncle Tian Huang gone over? The woman asked. That's right. He's at the border of the dark marshlands, and if a Dao integration stage mighty figure makes a move, he'll be the first to step in. And Lin is an exceptional talent that only appears once every 10,000 years, so we naturally have to take him seriously. A hint of approval appeared on the man's face as he spoke. The Celestial Arch was very pleased with how Ziwei had been pummeled during the battle at the Immortal Spirit Tower, Huangquan City. The candidates for the mission had already been confirmed. There were 10 robes, so they chose 10 people. Cassidy, Merlin, Tobias, Xiaozhe, Tina, and Lin, Su Xiaolan, Xianyuan Cheng, Su Qianyun, and Flying Sword God. Tina's spatial abilities were very powerful, and she could take in Lin and the others with her when necessary. As for Tobai, he decided not to ride the Supreme Mount for now, lest it be destroyed and he die. Everyone put on the black stealth robes, and their auras disappeared in an instant. Even their bodies merged with the surrounding environment, as if they were completely invisible. Even when the sun passed through their bodies, it did not leave a shadow on the ground. The cheats produced by the Celestial Arch were truly awesome. Let's go. Cassidy and the others stepped through space and led the way. The purple snow mountain of the dark marshlands. This didn't mean that the snow was purple, but that the mountains within a 1,000-mile radius were all purple. The earth veins contained extremely powerful yin energy, causing the temperature in this area to drop drastically. The mountains were covered in snow all year round, and vampires rarely resided here. A crimson formation flickered in the middle of the mountains. Boundless blood chi and yin chi converged toward the center, healing a certain man's internal injuries. This handsome man with waist-length golden hair was none other than Layden, who had been severely wounded by Emperor Tianhuang. There were 60 Blood Tribe elites standing guard outside the formation, guarding the important nodes. These 60 people consisted of 46 Spirit-nurturing stage mighty figures, 12 Soul Formation stage mighty figures, and 2 Return to Void stage mighty figures. Their positions were interconnected, so they would be able to react as quickly as possible if anything happened. Hey, little my little pagoda, have you prepared your alibis? Don't worry, Holy Leader. We've already sent a clone back to the sect before coming to Huangquan City. As long as it's not a Dao integration stage mighty figure, they won't be able to detect anything amiss with our clone. Wow, I want to learn a clone spell technique as well. This is an innate spell technique that only races with extremely powerful life force like us Blood Tribe have. We only discovered this innate spell technique in the Holy Land, and it has a lot of restrictions. Furthermore, we can't unleash it until we've reached the Return to Void stage. Lin was quite disappointed to hear this, but he suddenly recalled that his divine liquid creation technique was also a clone mystic technique, and his disappointment subsided significantly. Master, this is a map of the locations of strongholds. There are a total of 8 strongholds. At this moment, Tobias, who had transformed into a mosquito, returned. Their biggest problem now wasn't killing Layden, but rather how to kill him without alerting anyone. In order to achieve this, they had to kill all of the soldiers and bystanders before killing Layden in order to prevent them from alerting anyone to their whereabouts. Come, take some of my blood and smear it on your weapons. Any Blood Tribe cultivator below the Return to Void stage will die as soon as the blood touches their bodies. It's that powerful. Me too. Holy Leader, what a waste, I'm so sorry. Thus, Lin sacrificed another wave of blood for this operation. After analyzing the 8 strongholds, everyone decided to kill all 60 Blood Tribe cultivators at the same time, at the summit of a small mountain. 15 Spirit-nurturing stage Blood Tribe cultivators and 3 Soul Formation stage Blood Tribe cultivators were surveying their surroundings, and not a single mosquito could escape their detection within a radius of 5 kilometers. However, a mosquito slowly flew above them before suddenly transforming into Merlin's appearance. It waved its crimson banner, and a black veil enshrouded all of the guards. Not a single sound could be heard. 10 Spirit-nurturing stage Blood Tribe cultivators and 1 Soul Formation stage Blood Tribe cultivator were surveying the waters around them. A woman in a black robe stepped through the air, and a bright white moonlight materialized in the air as she slowly and soundlessly approached them. The immortal tool, the moonlight disk, left a bright blue trajectory in the air, and the air rippled as if a gentle breeze had swept past. 11 Blood Tribe cultivators were still chatting happily just a second ago, but their eyes suddenly widened as their bodies were sliced in half. The Soul Formation Stage Blood Tribe cultivator was still alive, and the two halves of his body were still trying to fuse back together. However, right at this moment, the terrifying, purifying power from Enlin's blood obliterated all of the vitality within his body, within an extremely spacious black fortress, a barrier of water enshrouded heaven and earth. Lightning flashed within the barrier, but there was no sound or energy fluctuations. Xiaozhe had reduced the 4 Soul Formation Stage cultivators and 12 Spirit Nurturing Stage cultivators to ashes. On a sacrificial altar, a white flaming bird flew through the air, enveloping all of the Blood Tribe cultivators within it. A woman in a jade dress stood on the back of the flaming bird, and her dragon sparrow sword transformed into streaks of invisible light that reduced all of the trapped Blood Tribe cultivators into charred black corpses. Between 2 gargantuan, snowy mountains, there was a bridge that spanned between the 2 mountains. Xian Yuan Cheng stepped forward, and clouds and mist suddenly appeared around him, isolating him from heaven and earth. The Blood Tribe cultivators discovered that something was amiss, and they were just about to spring into action when heaven and earth suddenly darkened. 6 strikes of the war god, Shadow Tiger. The darkness receded, and all of the Blood Tribe cultivators were sliced apart by Enlin's blood-stained, evil-slaying sword. At the summit of another snowy mountain, Sword Immortal Ling Xiao silently sliced 6 Blood Tribe cultivators into over 1,000 pieces. They couldn't be any more dead. At the same time, Cassidy, Tina, and Tobias also began to attack the 2 return to Void Stage mighty figures. Chapter 668. Blood Tribe returned to Void Stage mighty figure. Cyril was meditating on a round boulder in midair. His divine sense had already spread out for 50 kilometers, probing the movements of a large area. It was so small that he could even see the movements of flies and ants like the back of his hand. It could be said that Layden's safety rested heavily on his shoulders. A mosquito wearing a black stealth robe flew behind him, but he didn't notice it at all. The mosquito transformed in a black mist, and a lithe and graceful woman in a black robe appeared with a white longsword that was stained with blood in her hand. Cyril's body shuddered, and even though he didn't discover anything, his instincts told him to fly forward without even turning his head. However, he was still too slow. The white longsword was like a bolt of white lightning that instantly punctured Cyril's chest. Blood blossomed like a red rose, and the flying sword circled around before returning to the woman's hand. Cassidy? How could it be you? Cyril turned to stare at the woman with incredulity. That's right, the woman who had attacked him was none other than Cassidy. A seductive smile appeared on her face, and her seductive charm was imbued with an indescribable emotion as she strode through the air towards Cyril. There's no need to be so surprised, Cyril. I'm just testing out your skills. Testing out my skills? Do you think I'm an idiot? Cyril held a hand over his punctured chest as he drew a series of obscure trajectories in the air with his other hand. This small wound was indeed nothing to him. However, Cassidy was a holy disciple, and she had suddenly appeared to attack him, only to say that she was testing out his skills. This was extremely perplexing to him. Was she King retarded? She must be plotting something. However, he still didn't know what the other party's objective was. If it was a sneak attack, would that even work? He could heal a wound of this caliber in a matter of minutes. Most importantly, this was Layden's territory, which was also Emperor Yi Deng's territory. Who would dare to cause trouble here? Cyril's mind was filled with confusion, but his hands didn't stop moving. He had to report this situation to the others. Cassidy had also been keeping an eye on Cyril this entire time. If Cyril really were to use an information transmission spell technique, then she'd have to unleash her trump card. Just as the spell technique was about to be completed, Cyril's body suddenly shuddered, and his eyes widened. His lips moved as if he wanted to say something, but his voice was extremely hoarse, and he was unable to utter a single word. He half knelt on the ground, clutching his heart with a pained expression. Death enveloped his entire body, and his vitality was quickly dissipating. Plop! A few breaths later, Cyril silently collapsed to the ground. There was no way for him to struggle, no way for him to scream. Just like that, his life force was severed. Cassidy also drew a sharp intake of breath as she looked at Cyril's body with lingering fear on her face. Cyril, who was at the pinnacle of the return to void initial stage, was poisoned to death. This basically confirmed that it wasn't that the Dark Poison Lord was too weak. Instead, it was that Enlin's bloodline had become more powerful. She immediately relayed the news to Enlin and the others through the voice-transmitting talisman. Cassidy stood atop a round boulder with a forlorn expression. The Holy Leader's bloodline is so powerful. What should I do? I'm not going to be poisoned to death if I drink it, am I? The same forlorn feeling welled up in the hearts of the other two blood tribe underlings. In the center of a forest of black trees, a tree man with crimson eyes had his chest punched through by Tobias's blood-stained gauntlet, and his body flew through the air like a cannonball before crashing into a white spatial cube. This white spatial cube was an enchantment barrier set up by Tina, and it could isolate the inside from the outside world. As such, no matter how intense the battle inside was, it was unable to affect the outside world. Tobias, even if you're a holy disciple, you won't be able to withstand the wrath of Layden and Emperor Edang. If you let me go now, there's still a sliver of hope. The tree man roared through gritted teeth. His body was as tough and coarse as tree bark, and there was bright red blood flowing from the gaping hole in his body. Tobias cracked his neck, and a faint smile appeared on his face. Bryce, I can let you go, but you have to stand here and survive for the next 3 minutes. Bryce's expression faltered upon hearing this. What do you mean? Tobias splayed open his hands. I mean exactly what I said. I won't attack you, but you have to stand here for 3 minutes. Tobias's words were very clear, and Bryce recognized every single word. However, he was even more confused now. What the hell was going on? What the hell was he supposed to do? Stand here for 3 minutes? The green leaves on Bryce's head rustled, and his crimson eyes swiveled with a peculiar expression of confusion. He wasn't a true tree man. It was just that his outward appearance resembled that of a tree. At his core, he was still a blood tribe mighty figure, and he was a return to void intermediate stage blood tribe mighty figure at that. It was just that he was a green wood tribe cultivator, which was why his hair was green. After that, Tobias really did stand on the spot. What the hell are you guys doing? Bryce didn't dare to get complacent, and he continued to search for a way to break out of this encirclement. His feet dug into the ground like tree roots as he began to explore the white spatial cube. Theoretically speaking, Tobias had no vendetta against him, and Tobias had no vendetta against Layden's forces. Even the battle for the Holy Disciple position had already concluded. Tobias was the true winner now, so there was no reason for him to attack him. Just as these thoughts were racing through his mind, the blood in his body suddenly tremored violently. An extremely peculiar energy instantly swept through his entire body, imbued with the power of great destruction. What did you do to me? Bryce felt as if all of his energy had been sucked out of his body, and he half knelt onto the ground as if his vitality were about to be destroyed by some kind of power. However, right at this moment, the blood in his body suddenly began to glow with vitality again. The destructive power didn't take away his life. Instead, it destroyed some kind of negative energy in his blood. Boundless vitality and life force erupted forth. All types of euphoric sensations erupted forth. Bryce opened his mouth, and he moaned involuntarily. Tobias' eyes lit up with excitement. You didn't die. I did it. A return to void, intermediate stage blood, tribe mighty figure can withstand this power. This was an extremely exhilarating feeling, and tears suddenly began to well up in Tobias' eyes. Bryce stared at Tobias with a dazed expression. Why are you crying? Tobias' entire body trembled, and he was extremely touched. It was as if his life had been acknowledged by a mighty god. I can finally embrace you again, mighty holy blood. He excitedly relayed this earth-shattering news to Enlin and the others through his voice transmission talisman. The holy blood of the holy leader is effective on return to void intermediate stage blood, tribe mighty figures, above a return to void intermediate stage. Merlin and Cassidy were ecstatic to hear this. After hearing this news, Enlin immediately rushed toward Tobias's location without any hesitation. A massive weight was lifted off his shoulders, and his eyes glowed with excitement. He was going to recruit Layden's right-hand man, Bryce. Chapter 669. Bryce's face was completely flushed, and he panted heavily. His grayish-green skin, which resembled tree bark, opened and closed as the lush green leaves on his head rustled, as if they were crying with elation. "W, what did you do to me?" Bryce struggled to extricate himself from the indescribable feeling of pleasure as he stared at Tobias with a scorching gaze. A faint smile appeared on Tobias' face, but he didn't say anything. Bryce was extremely perplexed, but his body was very honest, and he didn't choose to act recklessly. He couldn't forget that feeling. The boundless power of purification was able to elevate one's life to a higher level, and it was imbued with boundless vitality and possibilities. He knew that this was the greatest opportunity of his life, and he couldn't give it up. Not long after that, an unfamiliar black-robed man appeared before Bryce. The man's footsteps were calm and collected, and Bryce could sense that this was a human being from his aura. "Holy Leader." Tobias extended a respectful salute. Bryce's expression shifted drastically. The exalted holy disciple Tobias was being so respectful toward a human, and he was referring to that human as the holy leader? Who the hell was this human? The man put down his hood to reveal his handsome features with a smile on his face. "Hello, I am Enlin." Enlin? Bryce felt like this name was very familiar. Soon, his heart jolted violently as he exclaimed, "You're the Enlin who beat Master Layden out of? Tui, you're the one who battled Master Layden in Huang Quan City." "That's me. Also, the power that you felt just then was a result of my blood. Cassidy, Tobias, and Merlin are all my servants, and they refer to me as their holy leader." Enlin looked at the dumbstruck Bryce with a smile as he continued. "You have two choices now. The first is to establish a slave contract with me, and I can lead you to the true pinnacle of your life. The second choice is for you to die." Bryce was completely dumbstruck, and his mouth gaped open. He felt like everything he was seeing was fake. After all, what Enlin had just said was far too astonishing. The three most respected holy sons of the blood race were actually Enlin's servants? If others were to learn of this, it would definitely create a massive stir across the entire Tai Chu continent. Tobias looked at Bryce's dumbstruck expression, and he immediately added, "Do you know why we were chosen by the Blood Patriarch as holy disciples? It's all because of the holy leader's blood. Bryce, think about it carefully." Rumble. Tobias' words instantly enlightened Bryce. Yes, if that's the case, then everything makes sense. Why had the Blood Patriarch chosen those three people in the holy disciple selection? Why had Layden suffered a crushing defeat in Huang Quan City? Why had they appeared here? I understand. I understand everything. Bryce turned to Enlin, and an unprecedented light erupted from his eyes as he said, "So this is the true path. You are the true God that guides us forward. This old servant, Bryce, greets the Holy Lord." Bryce extended a respectful bow toward Enlin. He wasn't an idiot. As long as it involved the true Tao, he would do anything to obtain it, not to mention that this was a massive opportunity. He had chosen to submit to Enlin, regardless of whether it was his body or his soul. Bryce knew very well that this was not just his choice. This was also the choice of the Blood Patriarch. Enlin nodded with a gratified expression. "Not bad. It looks like you know what's truly important." Enlin and Bryce established a slave contract very smoothly. Due to Bryce's submission, Enlin gathered everyone and changed the plan again. Su Xiaolan, Xianyuan Cheng, and the others arrived beside Lin, and they were once again thrown into disarray by the sight of the return to void intermediate stage Bryce fawning over Lin. Lin, you swindled another underling? Su Xiaolan's eyes widened with shock. She felt like she had underestimated Lin's efficiency in recruiting underlings. How could you say that I swindled a cultivator? He was completely won over by my charisma and willingly chose to stay by my side. Lin exclaimed with a smug expression. It's the greatest honor of my life to be able to follow the Holy Lord. Bryce's head rustled from side to side, clearly expressing his agreement with Lin. Bryce's head was quite unique. Even though he had a humanoid shape, there was a hat on the top of his head. The hat was actually the crown of a tree with lush green leaves growing from the tree branches. Lin laid a hand on Bryce's lush green crown to find that it was more delicate than normal leaves, and it had a light, refreshing fragrance to it. Little Boo, can you photosynthesize? He suddenly asked. Bryce faltered slightly before nodding. I can, but I'm not used to it. I'll introduce you to someone next time. She'll help you get used to it, Lin said with a serious expression. Bryce nodded with a slightly perplexed expression. He had studied photosynthesis before, but the amount of energy that could be extracted from it was limited, so he quickly gave up on this path. With Bryce's participation, everyone began to discuss their plan again. Let me tell you, this blood Rakshasa, true Yin formation can suppress and eliminate the residual chaotic divine lightning within Emperor Tianhuang's body, while also using Yin energy to heal his injuries. It's best if we do it at noon, because we'll be discovered sooner or later. Don't interrupt, Holy Lord. That's because the formation will be less effective against Layden's injuries when his yang energy is at its peak. That's when he's at his weakest. We can wait for another 2 hours. At this moment, Layden was still oblivious to the fact that all of his elites had been sacrificed and that his most powerful guards had betrayed him and were currently plotting with the enemy to kill him. He was breathing heavily as he continued to use the formation to recover from his injuries. The divine medicine that Emperor Yi Deng was searching for would only be delivered to him in a few days, so all he could do during this time was to purge Emperor Tianhuang's power from his body. After a while, the surroundings were still extremely peaceful, with only the sound of breathing echoing through the air. The Yin energy of the earth converged like a vortex. The blood energy of the formation surged like a dragon. Clack, 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 a familiar, rhythmic footstep sounded. Layden opened his eyes to discover that it was his follower, Bryce, who had arrived. Thinking back, he had paid a heavy price in order to convince Bryce to join his side. He had done many things both in the light and in the shadows in order to earn this mighty figure's loyalty. With this in mind, a warm smile appeared on his face. What do you need, Bryce? Just a small matter. Bryce scratched his head with a hand that was as withered as a tree branch. Tell me what our relationship is. There's no need to be so secretive. Layden was situated at the center of the formation, so even though he could chat with Bryce, he wanted to end this unnecessary distraction as soon as possible. I severed all of your formation nodes, Bryce said with a sheepish look on his face. What did you say? Layden felt like he had overheard something. Because there's a soap over there. Bryce pointed to the side of Layden's body. Layden looked in that direction with a confused expression, but there was nothing there. Splat! A sharp vine tore through the air before instantly puncturing Layden's heart. At the same time, the blood Rakshasa, true Yin formation, suddenly stopped operating as if it had lost its power source. Chapter 670. Layden finally understood that Bryce wasn't lying. All of the nodes of the spell formation had been severed, and Emperor Tianhuang's power was no longer restricted by the spell formation, so it began to explode within his body. Layden was just about to unleash his rage when a crimson sword glowing with white starlight suddenly appeared before puncturing Layden's chest. The terrifying power of the curse instantly spread to every corner of his body, severing the blood tribe's boundless vitality. Layden instantly realized that this was a trap. The crimson star appeared behind him as the power of the divine Tao stained the entire sky red, plunging the world into a sea of despair. He reacted decisively and unleashed his most powerful attack, even at the cost of injuring his Tao foundation. Crimson ripples proliferated from the crimson star, and the earth within a radius of over a kilometer was pulverized by a fearsome power. Bryce flew back with blood gushing from his mouth as the tree bark on his body crumbled like dust. A lithe and graceful figure quickly flew back, leaving the cursed star blood sword in Layden's chest. Layden was just about to pull out the sword when an inky black bead suddenly appeared in the air above him, upon which a terrifying spiritual power descended from the sky like ink before enshrouding heaven and earth. There is a sense of horror in the deathly stillness as a powerful sealing power crashed down upon Layden, as if the entire world of darkness were crushing down upon him. Even his consciousness was gradually being corroded. In that instant, countless dead souls wailed, and even Layden's mind was affected as his thoughts unconsciously slowed down. This was the power of Merlin's dead soul bead. This was an extremely fearsome sealing power. Layden reached out to pull out the crimson sword in his chest, only to find that the sword was already fused to his flesh and blood, so he wouldn't be able to pull it out in a short time. He immediately gripped the air before materializing a boundless blood star flying sword before stabbing it toward the boundless darkness. He knew that he had no time to waste. He had to escape from this trap formation as quickly as possible. A crimson streak of light tore through the darkness before crashing into the edge of the darkness, upon which an extremely sharp, screeching sound erupted. The blood star flying sword was shattered by the fearsome, rebounding force, and specks of white light began to seep into the darkness. Layden's expression shifted upon seeing this. His full-force attack had been unable to completely break through the darkness. Who was targeting him? An inexplicable sense of fear surfaced in his heart. It was definitely not easy for the enemy to do this. Right now, he only knew about Bryce's betrayal and knew nothing about the other enemies. Whoosh! The crisp ringing of a sword reverberated through the darkness. Layden unleashed his full power and was just about to unleash another attack toward the crack in the darkness when a terrifying power suddenly descended from the sky. A gigantic crimson fist broke through the darkness and began to descend. The terrifying power of the divine Tao surged through the air. This punch seemed to contain boundless power, capable of shattering continents and destroying heaven and earth. More importantly, Layden could sense a bloodline suppression from his ancestor's fist, as if he were facing a blood tribe ancestor who stood proudly above the heavens. The power of the blood ancestor, Layden was dumbstruck. He was King giving him a hard time. Aside from the blood tribe's Tao integration stage, super mighty figures, only the holy disciples could wield the power of the blood patriarch. The blood sword, the soul seal, the fist, Cassidy, Merlin, Tobias. You're all dead. Layden finally realized who was trying to kill him, and he flared up with rage as the veins on his forehead bulged. The blood star flying sword changed direction, and a boundless crimson light imbued with the power of the blood star divine Tao erupted forth as it stabbed toward the terrifying fist. He had no choice but to take the attack head-on in this situation. The collision between the flying sword and the fist was not as violent as he had anticipated. The blood star flying sword merely let loose a sharp screech before completely crumbling, creating a vast expanse of crimson sea in the air. The difference in power made it difficult for Layden's flying sword to even weaken the power of the fist. The fist pierced through the crimson sea before crashing down toward Layden with boundless power. A sense of impending doom engulfed Layden's entire body, and he knew that he would definitely die if he was struck by this fist. Layden bit down on the tip of his tongue and forcibly unleashed a mystic technique to manifest his divine Tao manifestation, the blood star, in front of him. Boom! At that moment, the earth began to tremor and crumble. Even the black ink seal was instantly pulverized by the terrifying power of the fist. Destructive power erupted forth for several dozen kilometers, pulverizing and engulfing everything in its path. Heaven and earth were transformed into a boundless crimson color as the paramount might of the blood patriarch surged forth. It was as if doomsday had descended upon this world. When the crimson light dissipated, a massive crater with a radius of 15 kilometers appeared before everyone's eyes. All of the snow mountains, lakes, and forests had disappeared. Tobias stood in midair, panting heavily. Blood flowed from his body, and his clothes were in tatters. He had clearly been wounded by his own spell technique. He should be dead after taking such a powerful attack, right? Merlin withdrew his deceased soul bead with a pale expression. A streak of crimson light flew back to Cassidy's side with a smile on her face. Layden's monstrous life force was severed by the cursed star blood sword, and Tobias used the blood of the Blood Patriarch to unleash an attack that was comparable to a Tao integration stage True God's attack. I'll go and scout out the situation. Bryce shook his withered body and flew toward the center of the pit. Countless vines extended from his feet as he explored the pitch-black interior of the pit. There's no aura, no energy, no life signs. Bryce's expression suddenly shifted as he hurtled back in retreat. However, an extremely fearsome power arrived even faster than him. Over 100 red specks of light instantly transformed Bryce's body into a hornet's nest, leaving a trail of death in their wake. Little Boo! And Lin let loose an involuntary cry. Right at this moment, a streak of crimson light flew out from the crater before fleeing into the distance. Tina reacted the quickest, and she slapped her hands through the air to seal off a white spatial cube within a radius of over a kilometer. The streak of crimson light crashed into the spatial cube, and a violent boom erupted, but it was unable to break through. Everyone was finally able to see the true body of the streak of crimson light, and they were all astonished again. A white and tender body, a small penis the size of a bean, tender cheeks, blonde hair. What appeared before them was a naked little boy who appeared to be only 4 or 5 years of age. Gasp! Who is this? And Lin exclaimed with incredulity on his face. He's running around naked in broad daylight. Su Xiaolan rolled her eyes. And Lin, please be serious. This boy may be young, but he's a tree killer. The tree isn't dead. Classmate Xianyuan Chung has already gone over to save it. The little boy only failed to kill the tree, Su Qianyun said in a mellow voice. There was a slight smile on her face, and she seemed to be quite pleased with herself. The flying sword god's lips twitched. Why are you still complaining at a time like this? I think none of you are serious. At this moment, Xiao Zhe, Merlin, Cassidy, and Tobias had already surrounded the little boy. That's Layden. Xiao Zhe was astonished. This aura and those facial features. He's undoubtedly Layden. Cassidy's expression was a little grave. How did Layden become like this? Merlin was a little perplexed. At this moment, Tobias spoke. There's a mystic technique in our tribe known as the Divine Tao Return to Nascent Soul technique. This is a technique that sacrifices one's Divine Tao in exchange for the protection of the Divine Tao for a certain period of time, as well as the ability to heal one's injuries. However, this technique has a very heavy price to pay. The user's cultivation base will drop, and they will also revert to their youthful state. From the looks of it, Layden's symptoms really are quite similar. No wonder he was able to survive Tobias' punch. Merlin heaved a sigh of relief, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. So that means Layden's cultivation base, at the pinnacle of the return to void initial stage, isn't an act. Xiao Zhe's eyes also lit up with excitement. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone chuckled. Layden's body shuddered as he pressed himself against the white spatial cube and trembled uncontrollably. Chapter 671. Just as everyone was closing in on Layden with malicious intent, a sinister smile suddenly appeared on Layden's face. He bit down on the tip of his tongue before chanting in a strange language, upon which his aura erupted to the pinnacle of the return to void intermediate stage. At the same time, an extremely sharp crimson light burst forth from his hands, which shattered the spatial barrier. Whoosh! Layden fled into the distance at an extremely fast speed. Cassidy, Xiao Zhe, Merlin, and Tobias' expressions shifted drastically as they immediately gave chase. Tina, take me with you. And Lin yelled. Tina immediately pulled Lin along with her as they leaped through space in pursuit of Layden. Layden fled extremely quickly, and everyone was struggling to catch up to him. Oomph. You caused my cultivation base to drop and my Dow foundation to be damaged. Cassidy, Tobias, Merlin, Bryce. None of you will get away. I'll get Emperor Yi Ding to send all of you to hell for all eternity. A cruel expression appeared on the little boy's face, and it was clear that he was filled with hatred toward all of his pursuers. This is the first time I've seen someone call their daddy so righteously. Xiao Zhe chuckled coldly. Layden faltered slightly at the sight of Xiao Zhe before a thought suddenly occurred to him. So it's you guys? Hee, look at how badly you've been beaten up by me. You useless dragon. You still dare to talk back to me? Do you want to fight again? You're just a stray dog. Xiao Zhe glowered at Layden with a mocking expression, and he didn't forget to give Layden the finger even as he flew through the air. Layden couldn't be bothered with Xiao Zhe, and he continued to flee. This was not the time to let his emotions get the better of him. Right at this moment, a white light flashed, and a little fairy flew toward Xiao Zhe with a man in tow. Tina's features were deathly pale, and it was clear that she had expended a lot of energy. Master, what are you doing here? Watch out for Layden's retaliation. Xiao Zhe immediately tried to dissuade him, and Lin didn't say anything. Instead, he glowered at Layden in the distance. Layden was still fleeing when he suddenly recalled his tragic past, and tears began to flow from his eyes. Wah! Little Layden began to bawl, as if he were a child whose toy had been snatched away. Then, an indescribable abdominal pain, accompanied by something exploded. PFFF. Layden clutched his stomach as his body trembled violently. This power was too familiar. It was the power that had brought him humiliation and trauma. As he ran, he shouted in horror, "And Lin, it's you again. You and I are absolutely irreconcilable. You make it sound like we've been friends for a long time." And Lin stopped chasing after Tina after using 2 special spells, as Tina was also out of energy. His 2 special spell techniques were able to slow down Layden to a certain extent. This short delay was not to be underestimated. It was exactly because of this slight delay that Layden finally entered everyone's attack range. Xiao Zhe transformed into a black dragon over 10,000 feet in length before unleashing countless bolts of lightning toward Layden. Layden hurriedly dodged, but his skin was still charred black by the bolts of lightning. Just as Layden was dodging the bolts of lightning, a crimson sword glowing with white starlight pierced through the air before stabbing toward Layden's heart. Layden had used a mystic technique to elevate his cultivation base to the pinnacle of the return to void intermediate stage, thereby allowing him to evade Cassidy's attack. The cursed star blood sword only managed to inflict a small wound on his waist. Oomph. You want to kill me? In your dreams. I'm no weaker than any of you now, so keep chasing me. When the emperors detect this, it'll be the time of your deaths. A cold smile appeared on Layden's face, and there was no hint of panic or concern on his face. He didn't know why the holy disciples had chosen to ally with Lin and the others, but the fact that they had joined forces with a human to kill him was enough to strip them of their status as holy disciples and subject them to the eternal punishment of the Tao integration stage emperors. This was a great crime of betraying the clan. However, to Layden's surprise, Cassidy and the others didn't seem to be nervous in the slightest. Instead, they were elated that the crimson sword hadn't struck his vital organs. What was going on? Layden, I think you'll be able to last for another 3 minutes. Cassidy chuckled. What do you mean? Layden's brows furrowed. This is a punishment from the holy blood. You'll know how powerful it is very soon. Tobias chuckled as if he had a card up his sleeve. Layden was getting a little nervous. What holy blood? What punishment? He didn't understand a single thing. However, Cassidy and the others didn't appear to be faking it. Cassidy recalled her cursed star blood sword and licked her lips with a smile. This is a sword that has been smeared with lethal poison. That's right, Cassidy had smeared Lin's blood on her sword. This type of blood was extremely lethal to low-rank blood tribe cultivators. Layden's actual cultivation base had already fallen to the pinnacle of the return to void initial stage, so he definitely wouldn't be able to resist the purification of the holy blood. Cyril, who was only at the pinnacle of the return to void initial stage, was a perfect example for Layden. 1 minute later, thump, thump, thump. Layden's heart rate accelerated for some reason, and a burst of destructive power swept through his entire body. He roared with agony as his body plummeted from the sky with one hand clutched to his heart. Boom! His naked body smashed into the ground, creating a massive crater. Cassidy, Xiao, Zhe, Tobias, and Merlin also caught up to Layden at this moment. However, they didn't rush to attack. Instead, they positioned themselves in 4 different directions to seal off Layden's path of retreat. That's right, there was no need for them to attack. Layden had been stained by the holy blood, so he was already dead. What did you do to me? Layden's body trembled as he spoke with great difficulty. He couldn't even stand, let alone run away. And Lynn and Tina also rushed over, and they heaved a sigh of relief at the sight of the little boy lying in the crater. We didn't do anything. We just stained you with the blood of the holy leader. The blood of the holy leader isn't something that everyone can handle. Weaklings like you are going to die. Cassidy spoke with a smug expression. All they had to do now was watch the show from the sidelines and let Layden die knowing the truth. Sure enough, Layden's condition began to worsen, and his body began to spasm. An untimely moan of pleasure suddenly sounded. Everyone faltered upon hearing this before turning to look at the little boy, only to discover that a peculiar flush had appeared on his face. It seemed like he was enjoying it. Rumble! The sky suddenly darkened. Dark clouds gathered and lightning surged. The brilliant might of the heavens intimidated the world. And Lin stared at the scenes unfolding before him with incredulity in his eyes. Layden didn't die, and his eyes were extremely bright. It was as if his body had been reborn, and his aura had also become more powerful. This is the blood of the holy leader? How wonderful! It has cleansed all of the impurities in my body, and even my life force has been elevated to a higher level. I'm going to progress to the return to void intermediate stage again today. That's right, Layden had absorbed Lin's blood, and he had broken through his bottleneck and was about to transcend his tribulation. Chapter 672. Heavens, the blood of a sacred lord is actually unable to kill him. Not only that, but he also backfired and indirectly helped him break through the realm. Everyone stared at the boy in the pit in shock, finding it hard to accept this fact. Don't be afraid. Let's kill him before he successfully breaks through. Xiaoza was the first to come back to his senses and reminded everyone. The eyes of Cassidy and the others lit up upon hearing that. That's right, the person undergoing the tribulation couldn't move, or they would suffer a backlash from the lightning tribulation. In other words, Layden had to remain where he was to be struck by lightning. During this period of time, he would be a live target, and this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Xiaoza had long wanted to take revenge for Yellow Spring City, so he made the first move. A massive dragon tail swept through the air as it swept toward Layden with unstoppable force, making the space around it warp and crack open. Right at this moment, Layden opened his mouth, and a semi-transparent white ball instantly enveloped his entire body. Rumble! The dragon tail collided with the white ball and was sent flying by the huge recoil. The white ball didn't move an inch, as if it was connected to the heavens and the earth. Its surface flickered with a sparkling and translucent luster. It was flawless like a perfect piece of jade, and it had actually blocked Xiaoza's all-out attack. This is the white world stone that my father left for me. Only lightning tribulation can penetrate this barrier. Unless one's power reaches the return to void pinnacle stage, they won't be able to cause any damage to this white realm stone. A faint smile appeared on Layden's face as he surveyed his surroundings. I'm invincible for the time being. You'd better run away before I come out of my tribulation. Lin and the others didn't think that Layden would still be able to spit out a protective bead from his stomach after being punched to the ground by Tobias. Furthermore, it possessed such powerful defensive prowess. They did not give up and continued to use all kinds of techniques to try and break the white boundary stone. But unfortunately, they all failed. Give up. It's not too late for you to run now. Layden was elated. Do you really think we can't defeat you just because you've reached the return to void intermediate stage? Xiaoze chuckled coldly. I can still beat you into calling me daddy. Tobias bumped his fists together with a cold expression. Layden's expression was ashen as he stared at the man before him. He felt like he was the perfect example of a tiger being bullied by a dog. Back when he was at the return to void pinnacle stage, none of these people would dare to act like this in front of him. Rumble. The world exploded. An extremely dazzling bolt of lightning descended from the sky. It was like a golden sun in the sky, illuminating the entire world in a golden color. The bolt of lightning pierced through the white realm stone before striking Layden's body with devastating might. Layden's body shuddered as the golden void lightning struck him, and his skin became slightly charred. Cassidy's brows furrowed slightly as a grave expression appeared on her face. This golden void lightning is very powerful. It's most likely due to Layden's exceptional foundation to begin with, which is why it was enhanced by the divine lightning. Once he breaks through to the return to void intermediate stage, his power will definitely increase drastically. If he wants to escape, we might not be able to stop him. 36 bolts of minor tribulation lightning won't be able to kill him no matter how powerful they are. Let's set up a trapping formation in advance. Tobias also had a resigned expression on his face. Everyone else nodded upon hearing this. Just as they were about to make their move, they discovered that Lin had already flown into the sky atop his brick. Rumble. Another bolt of golden lightning struck Layden's body. As the lightning snakes swam, his aura became more and more vigorous. Holy leader, what are you doing? Cassidy yelled upon seeing this. Could it be? Tobias' eyes widened, as if he had discovered a new continent. Boom! The golden lightning tore through the air before crashing down upon Layden again. Lightning flashed, illuminating the entire sky with a golden hue. The black brick had kept the golden lightning at bay. Layden's mouth gaped open in shock at the sight of the black brick above his head. Everyone else was elated. They finally understood what Lin was trying to do. He was trying to stop the divine lightning. The divine lightning had a specific target, and once it was obstructed in its path, it would become more powerful and eradicate all obstacles in its path. Return to void stage golden void lightning was indeed very powerful. But no matter how powerful it was, would it be able to break through the chaotic alloy brick's defenses? Boom! An even more fearsome bolt of golden void lightning struck the black brick, but it was still unable to break through its defenses. Lin, who was carrying the black brick, was forced back a certain distance by the fearsome explosion of lightning. Little Xiao, your skin is thick and you're strong, so you carry the black brick. Lin yelled. Only then did Xiaoze come to his senses, and he immediately flew toward Lin with an enthusiastic expression. All right, master, you can rest for now. Leave this kind of manual labor to me. Xiaoze loved screwing over Layden the most. Big, big, big. And Lin used his intent to transform the chaotic alloy brick into a gigantic black brick over 1,000 feet in length before giving it to Xiaoze to carry on his back. The black dragon possessed invincible defenses, and now he was carrying a black brick that resembled a turtle shell on his back. This combination struck despair into Layden's heart. Holy leader, you're the best. A mesmerizing smile appeared on Cassidy's face as she praised Lin from the bottom of her heart. Giant Lin, when can I become as outstanding as you? Tina wore an envious expression. It's nothing much, it's just some basic skills. Don't make a fuss about it. Lin waved his hand nonchalantly. Rumble, the tribulation lightning was still raging. Bolts of golden void lightning tore through the air before crashing into the chaotic alloy brick on Xiaoze's back, upon which they exploded like golden fireworks, creating an exquisitely beautiful scene. It was a beautiful scene, but in Layden's eyes, it wasn't beautiful anymore. Instead, it was terrifying, The tribulation lightning became more and more powerful, and it looked as if it wouldn't rest until the chaotic alloy brick was destroyed. What would happen if this lightning struck Layden's body? Lin, F*CKU. Layden was enraged, and he let loose a torrent of abuse. Go ahead and curse. No one is going to come and save you even if you curse until you're hoarse. Lin chuckled lightly. Wasn't the enraged cursing of his enemies an affirmation of his own power? He had no choice but to use his mouth. Layden's breathing accelerated as he looked up at the increasingly fearsome tribulation lightning overhead, but there was nothing he could do. Golden Void lightning was extremely fearsome, and even returned to Void stage mighty figures would do their best to avoid facing the Golden Void lightning head-on in case they received backlash from the heavenly Tao lightning. However, Xiao Zhe was different. Not only did he possess a powerful body, he also had the chaotic turtle shell, and he had the tamer of divine lightning, and Lin protecting him. Before he knew it, there were already more than 36 bolts of Golden Void lightning. But the tribulation lightning was still falling, and it was becoming more and more powerful as time went on. 49 bolts of Golden Void lightning fell, and Xiao Zhe's body swayed slightly as he struggled to maintain his composure. There were 64 bolts of Golden Void lightning, and Xiao Zhe's massive body was already lying on top of the white ball with an expression of agony on his face. Io, help! I can't even stand a brick. Layden, look at how hard Papa is working for you. Don't you feel touched? Xiao, heavenly tribulation, I'll resist. Zhe grinned and panted heavily. It really seemed to be a little painful, but he was still very happy. PFFF. Layden finally couldn't help but throw up a mouthful of blood at the sight of the devastating lightning. I hate you. You're all inhumane. Layden roared with grief and indignation. He was enraged, but there was nothing he could do. The 80th bolt of lightning fell, and the terrifying lightning reduced everything within a radius of over a kilometer to dust as a massive abyss appeared in the sky. Xiao Zhe was also struck by the shock waves, and his skin began to crack open. And Lin's expression shifted as he yelled, "Little Xiao, retreat. This is more than enough." Xiao Zhe immediately fled into the distance. The 80th bolt of Golden Void lightning was accumulating, and the dark clouds had turned golden. Terrifying lightning might erupted forth, threatening to crush the entire sky. The heavens had been enraged. Layden's legs gave out from under him, and he collapsed to the ground. An expression of despair appeared on his face. It's over, it's all over. Even I wouldn't have been able to transcend this tribulation lightning in the past. At that moment, he thought of his father. Chapter 673. That's right, if only Daddy was here. Emperor Yi Deng was so powerful, he would definitely be able to disperse the lightning clouds and start anew. The boy looked up at the terrifying might of the lightning in the sky, and tears of remorse flowed from his eyes. How did things develop to this stage today? What had he done wrong? Layden took a deep breath, and the fear in his eyes slowly faded, only to be replaced by an extremely determined expression. There was no construction without destruction. Nothing in this world was absolute, and no calamity was hopeless. There was always a glimmer of hope in the midst of despair. Perhaps he would be able to forge a peerless great Tao if he could survive this tribulation lightning. Layden's blood instantly began to boil, and all of the gloominess in his eyes disappeared. He reverted back to his stoic self. He pointed a finger up into the sky, and his aura soared explosively as a suit of crimson armor appeared over his body. Come, tribulation lightning. No matter how powerful you are, Bin Laden has nothing to fear. Boom, boom, boom. Golden lightning converged above his head, and the dense energy pulverized the space around him like a spiderweb. The center of the void had been pulverized into a pitch-black hole, and only the golden lightning remained. Gasp! And Lin and the others retreated for over a kilometer upon seeing this. A sense of respect welled up in their hearts at the sight of Layden's fearless and domineering figure. Layden is quite impressive. To think that he was able to overcome his fear in the face of such a terrifying tribulation lightning. Merlin exclaimed in admiration. It's a pity that he messed with someone he shouldn't have messed with. Cassidy's eyes roamed over in Lynn's body as she spoke in a slow voice. And Lynn nodded. I respect him for being a true man, so I'm going to make him a little more tragic. What do you mean by that? Everyone asked. A faint smile appeared on Lynn's face as he pointed up at the lightning in the sky. Lightning amplification technique. An invisible ripple proliferated forth, and the golden lightning in the sky suddenly became even more dazzling, tearing through the entire sky as heaven and earth tremored violently. In that instant, the golden void lightning transformed from the lightning of death into the lightning of annihilation. Everyone, tears welled up in Layden's eyes again as he looked up at the lightning in the sky. How can he be so strong? This doesn't make sense. But that's all right. Who do you think I am? I'm a peerless, powerful being who defies the natural order. How could I possibly succumb to divine lightning like this? A blood-red sword appeared in his hand. All of his secret techniques were activated. The might of the crimson sword was astonishing to the extreme, and the surging crimson light was even beginning to rival the golden void lightning. Katja, along with the shattering of space, the terrifying world annihilation, lightning finally descended. At this moment, it was as if the golden light had torn apart the primal chaos and the world had been born. The lightning, which contained the majesty of the heavens, became the only thing in the world. A blood sword with monstrous power? Shatter. Indestructible blood armor? Shatter. In the face of this terrifying lightning, everything in the world was like a dream, vanishing into thin air upon contact. In the end, the bolt of golden lightning struck Layden's body, instantly reducing him to particles even smaller than molecules before disappearing from this world. Not only that, but the earth within a radius of over a kilometer seemed to have evaporated. Even the White Realm Stone, which was supposed to be able to defend against all attacks from cultivators below the Return to Void Pinnacle stage, was also destroyed. It was as if everything had been wiped clean. Boom! Only at this moment did a deafening thunderclap erupt. The sound waves caused the earth to tremor as gale-force winds swept up, sweeping up trees and earth within a radius of several kilometers. At this moment, everything between heaven and earth was pulverized by the boundless golden lightning, as if doomsday had arrived. After a short while, as if some kind of mission had been completed, heaven and earth became clear again. The lightning in the sky began to recede, and the dark clouds also slowly dissipated. Sunlight shone down upon heaven and earth, and the sky was once again filled with color. However, the bottomless crater was like a gargantuan abyss in the earth, and it was still as terrifying as ever. And Lynn, Tina, Xiaozhe, Cassidy, Merlin, and Tobias all stared blankly at the scenes unfolding before their eyes as fear welled up in their hearts. Is this the F*** power of a minor lightning tribulation? Tobias' lips twitched. Layden died. He didn't even get a chance to cry out before he was instantly reduced to dust with his undying ambition, Cassidy said in a faint voice. Xiaozhe had already reverted back to his youthful form, and his body was trembling uncontrollably as he hugged his black brick tightly. Thank God Master told me to retreat. If I hadn't run away just then, I would have most likely been reduced to dust along with that bastard. That kind of power was not something that a mere black brick could withstand. After all, the black brick could only defend against a one-way attack. However, that bolt of lightning seemed to have been imbued with the wrath of the heavens, and it was a bolt of apocalyptic lightning. It was a 360-degree attack with no blind spots, and it was a fearsome attack that was capable of completely obliterating any Dao realm cultivator in their physical body or consciousness. Even Lin, who was never afraid of being struck by lightning, felt like his lightning manipulation technique wouldn't have been able to move that bolt of lightning. That golden void lightning had already transcended beyond the scope of his control, and it had entered an extremely mysterious realm. That bolt of lightning is very powerful, but we should still confirm whether Layden is dead or alive, and Lin suggested. No one had any objections. Layden had far too many trump cards. Even Tobias' full-force attack that he had borrowed upon the power of the Blood Patriarch had been blocked by him. It was best to confirm whether Layden was dead or not. After a quarter of an hour, the group finally heaved a heavy sigh of relief after finding nothing. Very good. Layden really was dead. This was not a place to linger for long. So Lin and the others regrouped with Su Xiaolan and the others. Su Xiaolan made her way over to Lin, and she heaved a sigh of relief upon seeing that he was fine. Lin, how is it? Is Layden dead? He's fine. Layden was struck to death by tribulation lightning. Lin replied with a smug expression. Struck to death by tribulation lightning. The flying sword god, Xianyuan Cheng, and the others were all shocked to hear this. That's a little complicated, so let's talk about it after we get back. In any case, all you need to know is that I, Lin, the Lord of Golden Lightning, can kill all my enemies, Lin said in an indifferent voice. Everyone, Layden's death was definitely going to have a massive impact, and the Dark Marshlands was going to be plunged into a bloodbath. Cassidy, Merlin, and Tobias had to return to the sect first in order to avoid the Emperor's investigation. As Layden's former bodyguard, Bryce definitely wouldn't be able to return, so he transformed into a small sapling and lay on Lin's head to conceal his identity as he followed the holy leader. Cassidy and the others were extremely envious of him. The secret decapitation team split up into two groups before slowly disappearing from the Dark Marshlands. At the very center of the Dark Marshlands, within the Divine Palace of Life, a certain jade badge shattered. The Emperor was at a critical juncture in his research of a mystic technique when his eyes suddenly turned crimson. Boom! A crimson pillar of blood burst through the roof of the Divine Palace and rose straight into the heavens. An extremely enraged voice erupted across the earth. Who dare to kill my son? I'm going to turn his entire family into blood ghosts and turn his sect into a blood prison. I'm going to torture everyone's souls for 1,000,000 years. Chapter 674. Emperor Yi Deng arrived at the Purple Snow Mountain, and a crimson sea surged through his eyes as he looked down at the ravaged ground. Judging from all of the strongholds, there were at least 8 people involved. How strange. How could Layden not have detected an attack of this magnitude? Emperor Yi Deng fell silent as he stared at the ghastly hole in the center of the spell formation. He made some calculations before flying toward a certain direction. He then stopped in front of a massive, inky black crater. What a terrifying power of lightning. To think that my son would die to tribulation lightning. A man stood in midair as crimson clouds surged and obscured the sky. It was as if the entire world had been plunged into hell. He stood on the spot for a long time before turning toward the east. There can only be one truth. Someone from the Celestial Court colluded with a spy from my tribe to kill my son while he was severely wounded. How detestable. Boom! An extremely fearsome streak of crimson light tore through the sky toward the east. Chaotic lightning suddenly fell from the sky to block the path of the streak of crimson light. Another earth-shattering battle erupted, and the Dark Marshlands was once again struck by a devastating disaster. Mountains crumbled, rivers were cut off, and cities were reduced to rubble. In the end, the streak of crimson light fled toward the center of the Dark Marshlands. The lightning chased after it for over 5,000 kilometers to no avail and began to turn back. Thus, the battle drew to a conclusion, but the true impact was only just beginning. Layden was a return to Void Stage mighty figure with the highest chance of becoming a Tao integration stage true god, but he had fallen in the center of the Dark Marshlands. This news created a massive stir throughout the entire Dark Marshlands. My god, Layden is a mighty figure at the return to Void Pinnacle stage. Who would dare to attack him? Is it a Tao integration stage super mighty figure? Impossible. If it was a Tao integration stage mighty figure, they would definitely not be able to escape the detection of the emperors of the Divine Palace of Life. It was most likely another return to Void Stage mighty figure. To think that someone would kill Emperor Yi Deng's son right under his nose. Bad asterisk SS. Apparently, a mysterious, powerful being from the Celestial Court had colluded with a Blood Tribe mighty figure to do this. I wonder which one it was. The Dark Marshlands and the Celestial Court are going to be in turmoil. That's none of our business. Let's find some blood to drink. The Blood Tribe was like this. Even though they were discussing this matter fervently, they didn't have a strong sense of vengeance. Generally speaking, the battles they participated in had to be related to their own interests. If there was a large group of blood breeds clamoring to avenge the death of an almighty being, the blood breeds would have been wiped out a long time ago. Even Emperor Yi Deng temporarily repressed his urge to seek revenge and chose to investigate the situation in secret. He wanted to stabilize the situation first. He had no choice but to play it safe. He wasn't strong enough to fight against the one who used lightning. What else could he do? News of Layden's death spread like wildfire across the Kingdom of the Nine States, and everyone in the Kingdom of the Nine States celebrated with the news that the Celestial Court was most likely responsible for Layden's death. The Blood Tribe was a great enemy of the human race, so the fall of such a top-notch mighty figure was naturally a great thing for the human race. Furthermore, this was the doing of the Celestial Court, and the humans of the Kingdom of the Nine States once again experienced the power and reliability of the Celestial Court. If they knew that the main culprits behind this incident were just a group of students from the Celestial Court and their subordinates, who knew what kind of expression they would be wearing? Lin and the others had already returned to Huang Quan City using the concealment cloaks provided to them by the Celestial Arch. No one knew about this. Everything seemed to have returned to normal, and they resumed their idle lives. The only difference was that there was now a small blade of grass swaying in the wind above Lin's head. The adorable Miao Tian couldn't help but burst into laughter upon seeing Lin's expression. "Ha! Big brother, and your head is a little green. Are you trying to tell us something?" Lin's expression darkened. "You don't know *T. Do you know anything about life? This blade of grass can give me power." Miao Tian burst into laughter and waved her hands. All right, you're right, huh? I can't take it anymore. Let me laugh for a while longer." And Lin left with a dark expression. What he had said was actually true. After Bryce transformed into a blade of grass, he stood on Lin's head and practiced photosynthesis, which allowed him to infuse a portion of his life force into Lin's body. In other words, if Bryce became stronger, he would also become stronger. This was an external cheat code. No matter how strange it was, and Lin wasn't going to turn it down. After all, he wasn't the type of person who paid attention to external appearances. Instead, he paid attention to inner qualities. For example, he didn't know whether his Dao partner-to-be, Su Xiaolan, was beautiful or not, but he knew that Su Xiaolan was a woman of extraordinary inner qualities and temperament. That was enough, and Lin stood on the city wall in a daze. He had nothing better to do, and the homeroom teacher prohibited all forms of entertainment. He thought about it for a moment before dragging Su Xiaolan over to play blind chess with him. Cannon 8, flat 1. And Lin placed his hands on the wall and looked into the distance with a gloomy expression. Su Xiaolan's brows furrowed as she said in a gentle voice, Rook 3, forward 9. Pawn 7, flat 6. And Lin's eyes lit up. The battle slowly became more intense, and in the end, Su Xiaolan was checkmated by Lin. This was not only a contest of chess skills, but it was also a contest of memory, spatial logic, and mental fortitude. And Lin won this battle through his own power. "Ha ha, I won. Thank you for letting me win, Xiaolan." And Lin was very elated. Su Xiaolan rolled her eyes in an adorable manner. "Can you give me 2 rooks this time?" "Sure. You can have both rooks, but you have to throw away a horse first." "All right." Thus, the two of them began to play blind chess again. It had to be said, it was quite an interesting game. Xin Yuan Cheng stood outside the city and found an empty plot of land to ponder over his domain. From time to time, terrifying explosions would erupt, causing the earth to tremor violently. Thankfully, the soldiers and students on the city wall were already used to this, and they no longer panicked. They looked up at the rising flames and soil, and they were quite pleased with the spectacle. Sometimes, they would even discuss the differences between this explosion and the last one. Time passed by slowly, and another day passed by in the blink of an eye. Early in the morning, Xiao Chao was swaying from side to side atop Lin's head. The little fairy slowly opened her jewel-like eyes and stretched lazily. She could feel that her energy had been restored, and she was full of energy again. She turned toward Lin, who was still fast asleep, and a sly smile appeared on her face as she pinched Lin's nose in a mischievous manner. Lin's brows furrowed slightly, as if he was feeling a little uncomfortable. The little fairy repressed her laughter and continued to pinch his nose. Slap! A slap flew through the air and sent the little fairy flying. Boom! The little fairy flew back like a cannonball, and a large hole was blasted into the city wall. Giant Lin, Tina flew back in a disheveled manner before looking up at Lin's palm with an enraged expression. Lin was still fast asleep, so it was quite clear that the slap just then had been an unintentional one. Cultivators with lower cultivation bases would have to be careful as pranks like this could easily be slapped to death. Tina saw that Lin was still unconscious, and a dazzling white light erupted from her hands before enshrouding Lin. Whoosh! The two of them disappeared from this world. In the next instant, the two of them appeared in the divine mirror world. It was also at this moment that a mystical voice sounded in Lin's ears. This was like the judgment of the heavens, a paramount and inviolable voice. Wake up, Giant Lin!